Are you ready? Because I'm not. No. Tell me what we're doing first.
Morning, Stanford.
Good morning. You're on.
Good morning, everyone.
Morning, Nick.
The meeting of the Board of Regents at Texas Tech University System is now called to order. Before we begin, we have some special guests here, but every meeting we try to recognize someone that goes well above and beyond the call of duty. And today I want to recognize Christina Martinez. Christina, if you'll come over here. And the reason we recognize Christina this time of year is she's our mother at graduation. Get over here. We are very forgetful, as most of you are aware. And one time it was raining. It may have been the last time it rained in Lubbock. And one of us had forgotten something. Christina left the United Spirit Arena, went back to her office, and I mean, it is raining. Gets soaking wet, brings whatever we needed back, and that's the kind of person she is. She takes care of our group. She goes well above and beyond. Nobody understands how much work this lady does, and we're so proud of you.
Thank you. Thank you very much.
Don't be embarrassed. So, on behalf of the board, I know that she is a Beatles fan and that she loves Paul McCartney. So, on behalf of the board, here are 4 tickets to go see Paul McCartney.
I appreciate that. Thank you all very much.
Okay, one more announcement, if you don't mind. Kobe Ray. Where's Kobe? Kobe is our new student regent. He will take office our next meeting. This is Josh's last meeting. So, Kobe, if you'd like to say a few words, please do. Come right over here. Tell us where you're from. Tell us how great Texas Tech is. And
I can follow orders. So, Chairman, I'm from Plano, Texas. Born and raised in Plano, but I've been out here now for a few years, and he's not kidding. Texas Tech is a great place, and it's a privilege to be here. The one thing I would say is that every day I go to school, both in getting my MBA here, but also being in medical school here, that everyone I meet at Texas Tech and everyone that's a part of this system is just an exceptional person, and it's such an honor and privilege to be able to work with the board and work with everyone at Texas Tech, just to keep the trajectory, the amazing trajectory that Texas Tech is on. So thank you, Chairman.
very good. Kobe, we look forward to serving with you. At this time, I would like to welcome Dr. Raymond Paredes, Commissioner of the Texas Higher Education Coordinating Board, who will make a presentation to the board. Dr. Paredes, nice to see you.
Nice to see you. I'm delighted to be here.
How long has it been? 2 years or a year? Were you here last year?
No, I wasn't here last
2
year.
years.
It's been 2 years.
2 years.
Yeah. Last year was difficult because it was, we're getting ready for the session. So
That makes it a little tough.
anyway,
Please
it's a pleasure to be here. As you'll recall, I try to make regular visits to boards of regents to just give them an overall context for the work that you all are doing, for the service that you're performing for the state. We try to tell you how the state's doing as a whole in terms of higher education, try to talk about some of the larger issues that we're all dealing with, and also hope to suggest a few ways that we could improve our overall performance. Let me start, as I usually do, with some information about our Closing the Gaps initiative. If some of you remember the beginning of Closing the Gaps, that means you've been around here for a very long time. We launched this initiative in the year 2000, and it's set to close at the end of 2015. You'll recall that there were 4 critical goals associated with closing the gaps. One had to do with increasing our research profile and securing more research dollars from the feds. Another goal had to do with improving the excellence of our institutions, and certainly Texas Tech has moved aggressively in that direction. And we had the 2 primary goals of increasing the number of students who were actually enrolling in higher education in Texas and increasing the number of students who are completing their credentials, whether an associate's degree or a career and technical certificate in a community college or a baccalaureate degree or above. We wanted to achieve more completions. This first slide shows that we have achieved a very significant gain in terms of overall enrollment. You can see that we were moving forward on a very steep trajectory. We've had a decline in enrollment in Texas over the past couple of years. Those numbers, by the way, are reflective of a national trend. The good news is that enrollment declines have been much steeper in other states. Texas is relatively mild. I should also say that most of the enrollment decline has been not in universities, but in community colleges. And as all of you know, community college students tend to be more sensitive to the economic environment. We've seen, for example, a significant decline in enrollment in South Texas, in parts of the state where the economy is booming and students can get a lot of jobs coming straight out of high school or having come home from the military. University enrollments have held steady, but since community colleges enroll the bulk of students in Texas, there's been an overall decline. These numbers show that our goal for 2015 is to enroll 630,000 more students than we had in the year 2000, and we are still above the trend line to achieve that goal. We just received information from universities and community colleges that applications have been way up this year, so we're hoping that this temporary decline will change directions in 2014, and we will achieve our goal of 630,000 new enrollments. To give you an idea of how the demographics of Texas have changed in less than 15 years, the original goal for closing the gaps was to enroll 500,000 more students compared to the year 2000. Two things changed that goal. First of all, Texas grew more quickly than anybody had anticipated when closing the gaps was established. And secondly, we felt that the goal of 500,000 was too modest in order to make Texas economically and educationally competitive with other states. So we raised the goal by 130,000 students about the year 2005, and we are on track to achieve that. I think we will make it. The next slide shows what I just indicated, the decline in enrollment. You can see that the decline in enrollment of white students is largely simply a factor of the changing demographics of Texas. As an overall share of the state's population, the white population is declining. You can see, of course, that there's been the number of Hispanic students enrolling in higher education over the past 13 years is more than doubled, which is a very significant achievement. The context, however, is that the population is growing even more quickly. So, as some of you have heard me say before, we keep coming up with extraordinarily good arithmetic solutions to geometric challenges. The African American enrollment growth has also been considerable, although there's been a decline from the year 2012, and it is now the case that African American women are now the most highly represented subgroup of any in Texas higher education. African American women participate in higher education in Texas at higher levels than any other group. African American males have now reached the target that we had established in 2000. 5.7% of all African American males are now enrolled in higher education in Texas. We thought we would have enormous difficulty getting to that goal, but actually we've achieved it, and that's totally attributable to the extraordinary outreach activity that's occurred all over the state to encourage more African American males to enroll in higher education. I'll talk about Hispanics in a moment. That's a different story. Anyway, you can see that we have had a slight decline of less than 1% from the year 2012, but we've had a very significant increase compared to the year 2000. okay? This is a slide I referred to just a moment ago. As you can see, you see on the top slide there, the top chart there, that you see that African American women participated at a level of 9.3%. Our goal was 5.7%. Notice that the African American male participation has climbed above that 5.7 threshold. But notice where we are with Latino, Hispanic females and males. Notice that Latino males in Texas participate in higher education at a level of only 4.3%. That, if we don't turn that number around, that will be an absolute educational and economic disaster for the state of Texas. We've got to work on that number. And here's the numbers for the Texas Tech system, and you can see that the enrollments have increased dramatically since 2000, 32%. Bear that number in mind because I want to compare it to another number in just a moment. For all the improvement that we've made in higher education in Texas, we still have a long way to go. For example, if you look at this next chart, you'll see that among the 10 largest states, we're not doing well at all in terms of our overall participation in higher education. Those percentages show that 7.4% of all the residents of California participate in higher education. They're students, either in community colleges, undergraduate programs at universities, or graduate school. And notice that we're well behind some other states. Now, this doesn't include some of the smaller states like Massachusetts and Minnesota that have higher rates of higher education participation than any of the states on this chart. But compared to the 10 largest states, notice that we're still lagging well behind. Here to me is the most gratifying slide of all. This is the one that I take the most satisfaction from. If I were to identify one goal among the four that I mentioned that was most critical, it would be the completion goal, the success goal, students actually finishing their credentials. And notice that our goal was to produce 210,000 graduates a year by 2015, and notice that as of 2013, we are well above that goal. Now remember, this is all completions, certificates, associate's degrees from two-year institutions, and baccalaureates from universities. That to me is the most dramatic indication of success. And once again, it's a tribute to every one of our universities and community colleges that have, since about 2005, I think, really started to focus on achieving a balance between access and success. I think for the first 4 or 5 years of closing the gaps as a statewide initiative, the focus was primarily on getting students enrolled. And now I think we've achieved a balance between the two. And I've been very gratified to hear about the aggressive retention and success initiatives that are underway in the Texas Tech system. And here are the numbers for Texas Tech. And once again, you'll recall that your enrollment rates had gone up 32% in this 13-year period from 2000 to 2013. Your completion rates have gone up 39%. And I always like to see the completion rates higher than the access rates. That shows that you're graduating a disproportionately large share of the students that you're actually enrolling. That's the kind of number we would like to see. Once again, we always try to make sure we give you an even picture of what's going on. Here's a picture that I think is very telling. This is a number that the Houston Endowment, particularly when Larry Faulkner was a president there, wanted to emphasize. He thinks that he thought, and I think it's a very, very good idea, he thought that you could pretty much tell the story of educational success in Texas by looking at one number, and he called it the number. And the number was a percentage of 8th graders in Texas in any given cohort who had achieved some form of post-secondary credential 11 years later. That means graduation from high school and then 6 years beyond that point. And these are the numbers statewide. The last cohort for which we have, the last cohort for which we had numbers when we did these slides, 2001. By 11 years later, 2013, 19.6% of those 8th graders in Texas middle schools had achieved some sort of post-secondary credential. Notice the numbers for Hispanics, African Americans, and economically disadvantaged. That's a huge discrepancy. Of course, that's a story that one could tell in any state in the country. But I think when you take into account that over 60% of the children that are coming through the K-12 system in Texas now are classified as being economically disadvantaged, we're facing a very dire future as a state if we don't turn those numbers around. Notice, and this is also significant, notice that the biggest predictor of economic success or lack of success is not ethnicity, it's poverty. We've got to do something about this issue. There have been conversations in Texas and all around the country about the growing gap between the affluent and the poor in this country. Well, this is the most important indicator of that. To give you some very basic data, if you come from the top quintile in terms of family income in this country, you have about an 80% chance of achieving a baccalaureate degree. If you come from the bottom quintile, you have about a 10% chance of achieving a baccalaureate degree. This next chart has to do with funding levels, and as you can see that although funding has gone up slightly in absolute dollars relative to student FTE, funding has gone down dramatically. I think it's pretty fair to say that we will not get back up to those early numbers. I don't think that we'll ever achieve that level of student FTE support. So once again, there's going to be a very heavy emphasis placed on cost efficiency. We've got to figure out ways to deliver higher education more efficiently. Yes, sir.
You know, we're fortunate to see this on the same page, but in one graph you talk about the growing economic disadvantaged student. On the next graph you talk about the legislature not appropriating funds to support the institutions. It's kind of counterintuitive in a sense.
I agree, but it's a reality, and I think we can't wait for the legislature to give us the levels of funding that we would like to see.
GAI and CTC stand for?
CTC is Community and Technical Colleges, and GAI is General Academic Institutions, which refers to universities. I apologize for not making that clear. Next slide just gives you just kind of gives you an indicator of some of the things that we hope you will think about as we face more and more challenges. I think this is in specific relation to the passage of House Bill 5. I'm sure you all have talked about it and what it means for this system. The fact of the matter is that one of the things that clearly HB 5 incentivizes at a level that's probably unprecedented in the history of this state is we need much closer collaboration among the various sectors of education and the workforce. K through 12 in higher education have to work more closely together. And both sectors of education have to work more closely with the workforce area. We have to do a better job of preparing our students to go to college. We have to do a better job of preparing kids coming out of high school to go either to college or go into the workforce. And we have to do a much better job of preparing students who go to college, either a 2-year institution or a 4-year institution. We have to do a better job of getting them ready for the workplace. Another study that came out recently, only about 10% of employers thought that college graduates were well prepared to work in their sectors. It's interesting that university personnel, particularly faculty, thought overwhelmingly that they did a wonderful job of preparing graduates for the workforce. We've got to talk and come to a common agreement about what constitutes workforce readiness. We have to, HB 5, it does a wonderful thing. It expands curricular opportunities for students, but those kids are going to need a lot more academic counseling. And I can tell you it's very clear that K through 12 cannot achieve that goal on its own. They don't have the resources. We're going to have to find ways to use some of the resources of higher education to make sure students are informed about the choices they have, about what adequate levels of academic preparation are. We just had a visit from the American College Testing Service a couple of months ago at the coordinating board. They always come and visit and give us the latest data they have about college readiness. And their latest data show that only 25% of Texas high school graduates are college ready across the board. 25%. Obviously, that has ramifications for all of us. We spent a lot of time debating House Bill 5 and debating the importance of Algebra 2. And our latest data show that Algebra 2 is insufficient as an answer to college readiness in math. In fact, only about 50% of kids who take Algebra 2 in high school are prepared to do college-level math. The data are very clear that if you want to go to a university in Texas, or anywhere else for that matter, you better take 4 years of math. This next slide, just I urge you to take a look at this document that was published by Complete College America called The Game Changers. It points out that there are certain practices that universities and community colleges can embrace that have a dramatic impact on retention and ultimate student success. And it points out that these are changes, improvements in the range of 10, 12, 14% a year rather than 1 or 2%. They advocate strongly for outcomes-based funding. You all have heard plenty about that. I'm not going to belabor the point. Co-requisite remediation, not a big problem at Texas Tech University, but a problem at Angelo State and certainly a problem at every community college in the state. We have an awful lot of students who need developmental education. And Complete College America analysis has shown that when it's possible, if we can place students who are just below college readiness in credit-bearing courses and give them extra support, supplemental instruction, supplemental tutoring, and so forth, those students are much more likely to go on and graduate than people that are simply placed in developmental education courses that don't provide any college credit. The next issue, full-time, is 15 hours of coursework. We've got to go back to that standard for the students that can take 15 hours of coursework. The evidence is very clear that if you take 15 hours a semester, you're much more likely to graduate. Full-time students graduate at much higher levels than part-time students. As soon as you become a part-time student, your chances of graduating from any institution, whether a community college or university, decline by more than half. And finally, structured schedules and guided pathways. This is particularly important for first-generation, low-income college students. They do much better in structured programs. One of the things that we've done in higher education over the past 25 years is greatly proliferated, for example, the number of general education courses that students are allowed to take. And the data are unmistakable on this issue. More choices, more confusion. More choices, less likelihood that you will graduate in 4 or 5 years, less likelihood that you will finish a degree. We've got to create more structured pathways for our students. There are some students that are very mature that can navigate their way through an undergraduate or lower division curriculum of hundreds of courses very nicely. But a lot of young people cannot, and particularly kids that were marginally prepared, particularly first-generation college students, low-income students. This next slide that we're going to work on over time, once again, consistent, predictable infrastructure funding. We make the case, as you all do, to the legislature before and during every session. We clearly have to do a better job of making our case. There have been a lot of attacks on higher education in the past 4 or 5 years about whether a college degree is worth it. We have to demonstrate that it is, more compellingly than we have. We have to do a better job of aligning with the workforce. We know that 80% of students go to college because they want to be more employable. We have to remember that, and we have to make sure that that students are prepared to go into the workforce. We've had some unfortunate discussions nationally and in Texas about whether we're producing too many English majors or philosophy majors or sociology majors. That, to me, is not the issue. The issue is, what are we doing to make sure that English majors, philosophy majors, and sociology majors are well prepared to go into the workforce? And so I'm encouraging, we're looking at this right now, and I'm thinking of trying to launch a statewide marketable skills across the curriculum initiative in all of our universities. So whatever students major in, the art history student that President Obama talked about, that they have marketable skills that they can identify and they can promote when they go for job interviews. We are going to have a major discussion in the next legislative session regarding SB 414, which is the bill that asks the coordinating board to study the issue of whether community colleges should offer baccalaureate degrees in applied fields. We commissioned the RAND Corporation, which, as many of you know, is considered one of the best research and development firms in the country, based in Santa Monica, California, to look at this issue for us. They did what I think is a wonderful study. It's posted on the coordinating board website. I encourage all of you to take a look at it because it's going to have an impact on the structure and the landscape of higher education in Texas. The issue of student learning outcomes, it's an issue that we've been talking about in higher education for at least a dozen years or more. We haven't made much progress on it. We have to. As the costs of higher education go up, students more and more, families more and more, employers more and more want to know what the students actually learned. We have to be able to measure it. This is the last point. It's a sensitive issue, I know, but I think it's important to raise it. We need to align the faculty tenure and promotion system more closely with what's in the best interests of students and workforce development. We place a lot of emphasis on research in universities. We don't place as much emphasis as we should on teaching, and particularly on service. For example, if we're going to achieve our educational goals, we need a lot more higher education faculty working in the schools, helping teachers in professional development, helping improve the level of rigor in STEM fields in high schools. We need to make sure that faculty who perform outstandingly in that particular area are recognized and rewarded for it. I've said over and over again that if we remember the principle which is present in most faculty handbooks, that the one most important characteristic is superior intellectual attainment for advancement, and faculty can demonstrate superior intellectual attainment in teaching and service, the quality of an institution won't be compromised. But we've got to find ways to encourage, incentivize faculty to do some of the things that need to be done, like working directly with K through 12. And finally, this is a slide that shows what we're working on in terms of the next iteration of a higher education strategic plan. We have a very distinguished strategic planning committee. It's chaired by Woody Hunt, who many of you know, former chair of the UT Board of Regents, and the vice chair is Larry Faulkner, former president of the University of Texas at Austin. We've made some early progress, and we think we're going to focus on these particular areas: workforce alignment, the actual value of an education, and overall excellence. Thank you very much.
Any questions? Any questions? Dr. Fred?
Commissioner, can you take 1 minute? This gap between the affluent side of families being able to send kids to college and this widening gulf that's existing, what are there any thoughts you can share with us on how we can begin to work towards getting those kids that are getting further and further from the dream of having a higher education? What can institutions of higher education do to assist with that?
Well, there are a lot of things that we can do. First of all, we can work with the K through 12 sector to set acceptable levels of rigor for all children. You know, one of these, I'm big on polls and surveys, and another survey that came out about 6 or 7 years ago, and I'm certain that circumstances haven't changed since then. I think it was Education Week that took a survey of college and university faculty and high school teachers, and the question that was asked of them was very simple: how well are high schools doing in preparing students to go to college? The high school teachers, at a rate of about 77–78%, said we're doing either a very good or an excellent job preparing kids for college. The response from the university and college faculty was about 18% said that high schools are doing a good job. We've got to talk more regularly. We've got to work together. We have college and career readiness standards that almost nobody talks about anymore because of all this national anguish over the Common Core standards. But the reason that those academic standards are so good is that because they were developed by legislative mandate with participation of a 60% ratio of college and university faculty working with 40% of that body from high schools. But we had university and college faculty working with high school teachers at a very intimate level for over a year to develop these college and career readiness standards, and they're among the best in the country. I think they're better than Common Core.
Okay.
That's one area. I think we have to do a better job of, once again, helping the advising that goes on in high schools, which oftentimes is poorly informed. We've launched an initiative called Advise Texas, which places recent college graduates in high schools to work as near-peer advisors. It's kind of an advising analog to Teach for America. We're trying to expand that program. But those are some of the things that we can do. Do a better job of recruiting some of your best students into the teaching profession. It's not always about the salary. We need to make it attractive. We need to make it appealing. We need to revise the way we teach, we prepare teachers. It should be more clinical-based and less course-based.
Yes, sir. Thank you.
One
Yes.
last question. I'm assuming that this conversation is going on in other states, especially with similar demographics.
Absolutely.
So is there a template in another state
No.
that is leading the way that can be adopted, or are they all struggling with the same conversation?
I think most states are struggling more than Texas is. Particularly, for example, I think Our success with African-American and students and Latino students over the past 13 years is pretty remarkable. We have a long way to go, but we're doing as well as anybody and better than most.
What is the state of Minnesota doing? Aren't they at like 11 or 12%?
They're very high.
What are they doing to be so successful?
We've studied that. They have a long tradition of effective teacher preparation programs. I think they do a very good job of preparing teachers. If you look at national surveys, you look at the universities in Minnesota, they're typically near the top in their reputation for preparing teachers for the workplace. I don't think there's any question that the fact that Minnesota is an affluent state. Sure. They have fewer poor students than some others like Texas. They have an overall strong university system in Minnesota that also serves as a beacon, attracts young people, and I think we have to do more of that.
Sure.
Massachusetts, similar situation, lots of distinguished universities that work in K through 12 and so forth. Very high academic standards for children, high expectations for all kids.
Mr. Chairman, sorry.
Yes, sir.
Mr. Chairman, Regents, and Mr. Commissioner, I wanted to just mention one project that we're working on through this funding of the National Science Foundation. It's a $6.3 million project through our Department of Math. And we're reaching out to, we have 15,000 teachers throughout West Texas middle schools, where we're reaching into those schools, working with almost 200,000 students throughout West Texas on strengthening their math skills. It's a preparatory dimension that I think is really leading edge as far as reaching some of these students that may not have the skills necessary, but through this program, strengthening their skills to make them better prepared for success.
And I would hope that the Texas Tech faculty that are working in that project, if they can demonstrate significant achievement, that ought to be recognized in the promotion system.
Thank you.
Any other questions?
Thank you, Commissioner, for coming.
My pleasure. Thank you.
We look forward to our continued working relationship. Thank you so much for being here. At this time, the meeting of the Board of Regents will recess. We will continue with the Carr Scholarship Foundation meeting and then committee meetings. The meeting of the board is expected to reconvene after committee meetings are completed this afternoon. Chairman Steinmetz, Carr Foundation.
Yes, sir. The meeting of the
third largest North American firm that does this work, and they have 64,000 assets under management, including assets related to DFW Airport, Texas Wesleyan, Cook Children's, and then also Arlington ISD. They have a long list, obviously. The actual team that will be doing our work includes an accountant as well as a landman. Each of those individuals has 30-plus years of experience. This isn't the partner that's going to be looking at the work later. It's actually who's going to be conducting our work. We really lacked that they had a landman on the team. I think Candace, oh, there you are. Candace is going to talk a little bit about how we decided to focus the work.
On this audit, we decided to focus on our top 50 leases, and we're going to roll this out in a 2-year phase. So in the first year, we're going to focus on our top 25 revenue-generating properties. In 2013, that accounted for almost $4.5 million. And when you look at that compared to total revenue, it's about 62%. Of our total revenue just off of those top 25 leases. The majority of those properties are in the Seminole San Andreas unit in Gaines County, Texas. Actually, all of the top 25 leases are coming out of Gaines County. The Carr Foundation owns an interest in 24 tracts within the Seminole San Andreas unit, and historically that has always been between 65 to 70% of our annual revenue when you look at that as a whole. In the second year, we're going to focus on our top 26 to 50 leases. In 2013, when you look at our top 50 leases, that accounts for almost $5.5 million, which is 78% of our total revenue. So by focusing on our top 50 leases, you can see that we're really focusing our priority on where our revenue is coming from.
And so with that, we will respectfully request your approval for us to engage this firm to do our mineral management audits. Does anyone have questions?
Mr. Chairman, I need to recuse myself from a vote on this. Bank of Oklahoma's a customer of mine, so records show that I did not vote.
Thank you, Regent. So,
Second?
Dr. May, is there anything you'd like to add?
I think it's a great step. Obviously, I thank Regent Walker for bringing this forward. I think it's something that we need to do, and we obviously have great confidence in Candace and her crew and their ability to track royalties, but it's always a good thing to have internal auditing, and as this system is known for, and this is a part of it, and I think it's a great way to go.
Candace, Jim, thank you. Are there any further questions or comments? Okay. Angie Wright, please present item. Oh, it's not an action item.
Should be. No,
Is it?
well, she asked for approval.
She asked for approval.
The engagement of the contract.
We do need approval of this.
Yeah.
I'll second it.
Okay.
You can do it, John.
Hearing a motion in a second, all those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Those opposed, motion carries. Ben Locke, you've been fired.
On the scholarship program at Angelo State University. This will allow us to continue some of the great work we've done and continue to offer a number more of students scholarships for the upcoming year.
So I'd like to just get reconfirmed to me. I've heard that revenue is increasing, not necessarily coming in off our oil and gas revenues along with the return on our portfolio at a significantly higher rate, because normally 6.5% on an endowment is large.
Yeah.
Yes, sir.
But do we feel good this is sustainable?
Yes, sir. Even with this projection, if we continue the 6.5%, I'm projecting that our principal balance will go from $114 million at the end of last year in excess of $150 million by the end of fiscal year 2017.
Regent Francis, you bring.
Can I do something with this?
Here's the non-technology guy. All right.
I didn't bring my Big Chief Indian pad, but this is basically how I work.
Now I'm real confused.
I was wondering who's going to own up to setting that up.
If we look at oil and gas versus the distributions, I just want to make sure everybody understands this. Our oil and gas in 13 and was 7,160. You can see off the financials. And in 12, it was, and correct me if I'm wrong here, 7,406. Down a little bit.
Those are thousands.
These are thousands, yes, 7.2 million, 7.4 million. But if we look at what we actually issued in terms of, for the scholarships, it was 4,429. So we had a surplus of 2,979, or almost $3 million. And if we look at the 6.5% or 680, that's 180 in surplus. But if you look at the increase of the fund size, it went from 104 to 115, which increased about 10.5%. So in reality, we're actually continuing to put money into, and you know, if you look at buckets here, you know, by contract, if this is the royalty bucket, it has to go first into the fund. So we're not taking the money out of the royalty, we're taking it out of this fund. But if you really look at what's happening on a net basis, we're actually continuing not only to have the fund perform, but we're continuously adding to the size of the fund. And so if I flip this, if you look at performance of a market going back in the 1920s, it's between 8 and 9%. But all funds have a balance of fixed income, and now they have private equity, which typically outperforms. But if you say that that's diminished somewhat by the component, let's say 35% of fixed income, your expectation, if it were just those two components, you'd have about a 7.5% performance of your fund over time. And so what I did, and this is exactly what you said, Angie, if we look at the fund at 7% growth, and if this is 2014, we're at 115. But if you go out to 2020, and this is not differential equations with 7 unknowns, this is pretty simple math, I can do it. You're at 185 million at 7% growth, and you're at 224 million, and I think you said essentially the same thing. But if you go to, I wanted to go far, so I went to 2030, and it's 363 and 581. Remember, we grew at 10.5% last year. If you go to 40, it's 715, and it's 1.5 billion. You know, and if you've read The Richest Man in Babylon, which talks about the, compounding numbers, you could look at this and say that's good. This is bad. We're not doing our job. And if we don't understand the fundamentals of this, we're not doing our job. And I don't have a conclusion. I think we collectively should have a conclusion that we need to maybe even use some consultants working with Dr. May in seeing how we can more effectively use this asset to help us. Because if this occurs, San Angelo State, is stuck in the mud, and we could be doing a lot of things to help it overachieve rather than being stuck in the mud to a certain extent. So
the message you're on, that you're kind of swimming towards, is the spending rate at 6.5 is more than supportable. In fact, it could even argue could even be more.
We're in a negative
Yeah.
spending rate.
Yeah.
I mean, we have a negative number that we're using out of the endowment. It's not 6.5%.
Good point.
So do you have a recommendation at this point?
No, I'm not smart enough to have a recommendation.
It is a good question, though, because the question really is UPMIPA, which defines what a prudent man investment of institutional funds describes as being under 7%, being a fail-safe point. But with the type of information that Regent Walker has presented today, it would be worthwhile for a legal opinion to tell us if we could even go above that 7% and still have a valid defensible position for the Carr endowment at Angelo State. That's what has limited us so far, is the UPMIPA restrictions, but it's very unique here because we also have income coming from the oil and gas properties.
Dr. May, will you touch on briefly, you recognize the covenants associated with the trust, and I've asked you and Angie to look into potential housing projects that would be simply for Carr scholars, because again, we recognize the housing's an issue, infrastructure. Have you done any research on that, and where do we stand in terms of within the trust?
I I think if housing became an issue, I think it's a little ahead of its time. It's something we need to be looking at down the line, though, that we could use these funds for. But I want you to know that we've put in a very aggressive strategy with the CAR funds and with the approval of the Regents. And we continue to add to it almost monthly. We're trying to stay up with it. It is a moving target, as Regent Walker has very clearly pointed out. And, this year we even went out and rather than having signings for athletes, we had signings for CAR scholarships at all the different communities. And we went to dozens of communities all over West Texas having these huge CAR signings. We had one outstanding young student over at Bridgeport, Texas, that was a Merit Scholar and chose Angelo State University over Rice and OU, primarily because, the extra amount of funding that he was going to get from Angelo State, but also they liked our faculty. But I can tell you that the CAR, as Regent Walker pointed out, it's growing. And about 50% of the incoming freshmen this coming fall are on CAR scholarship. And so that's up significantly from just a few years ago. And we were able to do that because we raised our admission standards and we're getting a better group of folks coming in. But the CAR success, the retention rate on CAR is like at 80%. And so we know that this is out there, but I can tell you it's on our watch that we continue to monitor it and be even more aggressive every year. And we have been. And I've worked very closely with especially Dr. Flores, and we have implemented any number of new initiatives that have gone out and used CAR funds, but it's strictly for scholarship, just as Robert and Nona Carr wanted us to do. But it's a treasure for Angelo State, and it'll be something 10 years from now that'll be an amazing feat, and it'll answer to a lot of things that Dr. Paredes was talking about. It's going to offer opportunities to kids to go to school and with little or no debt. And they won't necessarily have to be the top of their class. They could just need to be good students.
I want to commend this Board of Trustees, though, for when they inherited the CAR Scholarship Foundation. Originally, we had a balance of about $5.5 to $6 million that was going unspent. That was so over-the-top conservative that this board made a decision that we could be a little bit more aggressive because of the points that have been raised today by Regent Walker. It's also important to note that the current rate of return, if they had continued that stream, would have been about 3 to 4%. So this board has been very aggressive in putting the CAR scholarship money in the long-term investment fund, have consistent returns, and actively working to get the funds working for scholarships for the students. I agree with Mr. Walker completely that we still need to look at even being more aggressive with it.
And Jim, in order to do that, do we need a legal opinion to be more aggressive?
I think it would be helpful. Yes, I do. I think it would be an example that would provide this Board of Trustees proficient background and information that would help them as they go through the decision-making process.
Jim, with our current law firm that we use for the CAR, would they be appropriate for this, or would we look to a specialty in oil and gas or endowment firm?
It'd be more of a specialty. Yeah, I'm looking at the whole investment in the Prudent Man Investment Act. It would not be the current law firm that we use is excellent in taking care of the oil and gas properties and providing a general overview for that, but this would not be their area of expertise. But we can get such an area of expertise.
Mr. Chairman, I think this is a great issue that Regent Walker has brought before the board, and I think that's an outstanding idea. We are, because we've got an asset that's atrophying on us if we don't use it properly.
Needless to say, we had the funds to cover this.
Yeah.
The other thing I would like to mention.
I'm glad I didn't have to ask that question.
Would compliment President May also on the fact that last year this board actively decided to take some of the funds that were available and assign a person in his recruiting office to work with CAR, and that's showing effects too. So I think the overall strategic vision for CAR is good, but this would really enhance it.
John.
Chairman, there is a couple of aspects of the legal issue, one being how broad can you interpret the CAR will with respect to what usages can be made of the money? And Jim has alluded to the fact that the language is scholarships. And there's been a fair amount of looking at what that might mean and what you'd have to do to change that. The other aspect being the UPMEFA statute that Jim has alluded to. And I think I have this correct, Jim, that the 7% threshold is sort of the presumptive threshold.
Yes, it is.
Saying that if you're 7% or under, that's a presumption that you're doing your fiduciary duty, not a guarantee, but a presumption. Over the 7% is a different issue, but it's not like, as I understand the law, that you just can't do it. It's more a matter of what is a prudent man standard. So that would probably be a matter for outside counsel. For our ability to engage outside counsel is simply a matter of Attorney General office approval, which usually comes fairly easily. So we can certainly look into that.
But I think that the point that I was trying to make is if you can't look simply at the endowment. You've got to look at it in total. And I think that that's where we're kind of missing the boat.
I'd like to ask a clarifying question because I want to understand the math here on the chart. So we have an asset that is oil gas revenue, and I assumed that 100% of that revenue flowed into this endowment fund.
Right.
And so I'm not clear when you, over here where we get to 1.5 billion, what is that number? Is that the value of the asset? What is that?
That's the corpus.
The reality is.
No, the corpus is a bunch of oil and gas leases.
You know, that's the value of the fund, is it's growing in compound.
This is investment.
Now, a better analysis, and I didn't have the data, would be to go back 15 years and look at the amount of royalty each year and the amount of scholarships each year. And if that has been a positive number every year, and I don't know, you guys would know that, but that's what I was trying to point out is that the reality is we're in the last 2 years and probably in the last 4 or 5 years, it's been a number that's been additive to the endowment, and over the top of that, the endowment's growing. So we haven't taken any money on a net basis out of the endowment.
So aren't we distributing 6.5% of the?
Yeah, but I was
The value of the endowment.
Right, so the 7% here would only be netting you 0.5.
Right, 50 basis points. Okay.
But he's still getting.
That's a pretty aggressive.
He's still getting his 8 to 9% on oil and gas revenues.
Going in.
Yeah.
So each year, our endowment number that you're distributing is going up, 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 up.
Yes.
But the
thing about it is, it's
the
not.
value of the oil and gas leases could be 1.5 billion today.
Well, no, the value
100% of the revenue is always going into the endowment.
I would say that if you looked at the value of the endowment on a rule of thumb basis, and you'd really have to do a discounted cash flow, it would probably be somewhere between a PV4 and a PV5. And so, you know, that would be approaching $100 million.
So it's sitting over there at 100 million, pushing off whatever the.
Well, that's a good point.
Yeah, I mean,
Because what
we're
really
trying to
looking
understand
at
how these two are growing.
is an asset in the long-term fund of 115 million, and then an asset in the all properties themselves of 100 million. Right. So you're really talking, by distributing 6.5% of that, you're really talking roughly looking at a $200 million, you know, total asset value for the endowment now. You're really talking 3.25%. Does that make sense?
That's another way of looking at it.
It's so hard to compare this to most gifts to universities, because that gift that comes in is mainly static. For instance, if somebody gives us $50 million, it stays static. And so you're just spending part of what that $50 million earns. But this is bringing in so much income every year that's going directly into the principal.
Texas Tech's foundation, we have not only the earnings off of that endowment, but Kent and Scott and them are bringing in $100 million a year. It's essentially kind of the same principle.
Yeah, I think where you're going, Rick, is the endowment grows, the income spending rate out of it, even though it's at a percentage of 6.5, because I think that's what you're saying, as it grows, it's generating more income. Because the income coming, right. I see what you're saying.
But theoretically, like this year, it grew 20%. If you don't take out what we spent. So it grew 10% from the investment and 10% from the oil income. So it grew 20%, and we're taking out 6.5.
So you're taking out. The following year, you're going to take out 6.5 or 7 of a much bigger number.
Yes.
Okay. So it all works out over time.
6.5 is something
That's the point.
that I think we are good with.
I know that this is it is a stimulating conversation. And I do think that there needs to be a work group that really studies this.
Totally agree.
There needs to be a legal opinion. I think my suggestion might be, and if you need a motion, that you would ask several members of the board for a work group session, also in concert with Mr. Huffaker, to guide, and with President May, to guide the legal opinion on this, and that we come back and have a report on maybe what best options, best practices, what we can and can't do. So do you need a motion for that?
I second that motion.
Let me show you, just for education purposes, let me show you one thing. If this is Sprayberry, and Mickey, correct me, and you've got Strawn, and you've got different.
Mr. Walker, you can chair the committee.
You've got all these formations, and you've produced each one of these vertically, and you've produced a lot of oil, the biggest basin in the United States. But each one of these basins now is going to be drilled horizontally, and I can identify about 9. In the Wolfcamp, you've got different benches in it, so you're going to drill. We're going to produce at least as much oil from this horizontally, and probably twice as much as we've produced since 1921. So this is a tremendous asset, and it's going to keep on giving. And I think we need that perspective. The easy thing would be, let's go sell that royalty. No. But I'm saying
about,
this royalty that at one point in time when it was given was worth $4 or $5 million is now worth $100 million, but it's generated $115 million. And this is an asset that's going, and that's not even part of the calculation. This is a tremendous asset that Angelo State benefits from, and we need to do our job to really understand this and see what we can do to help Angelo State.
Thank you. Chancellor.
I just want to say, I think that's a great idea that we monitor it and everything. But look, this is a great asset, we all realize this. It's a drop in the bucket compared to what the permanent university fund is. I mean, it's just incredible the amount of revenue that they're bringing in every year from oil and gas. It's just unbelievable.
That's exactly what I was going to say, Chancellor. I was going to say, we could learn a little bit by studying the UT system model on how they address the permanent university fund, because it's the same model, except in this regard, their oil and gas revenue is very small now compared to the overall endowment. That's not to say it's small, but it's small relative to the overall endowment. Because since 1921, they've been building up this endowment.
Dr. May, and then we're going to wrap it.
Yeah, 6.5 is where what we're asking for today, and we'd like to stay at that level, and that'd be great.
There's two. The first item is going to be the continuance. The second item is going to be Regent Montford's request to form a committee. I heard a motion in a second. Any other further questions?
You have a motion on second on my
On
motion.
your
but
motion.
On the first one.
Okay, but on the first motion being the
Angie's.
continuance at the current 6.5 rate, is there a motion? Do I hear a motion? Motion second. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Those opposed? Motion carries. Okay, going to Regent Montford's recommendation and motion to form a committee. All those in favor say aye. Aye. Those opposed? Motion carries.
Lancaster was the
Okay.
second.
And Regent Lancaster was the second.
Second on that.
Okay.
Do you want to form the committee, John, or talk to the committee after?
I would like to visit with Chairman Long outside of committee and allow him to weigh in on that. Okay, what item are we on? Okay.
Long needs to be on that committee.
All right. Final item of business is the announcements. Is there any announcements that anyone would like to make? Okay. Hearing no further business, do I hear a motion to adjourn?
So moved.
Can the motion? Hearing a motion and a second, the meeting of the Board of Trustees of the Carr Foundation stand adjourned.
We will now move into Finance Administration Committee. Chairman Steinmetz, please continue.
Gee. All right. Let's.
Thank you for the opportunity to present to you today. Texas Tech University respectfully requests your approval of Finance and Administration Item 1. We approve revisions to the traffic and parking regulations and fees. This is found on pages FA 2 through 5 and also in Attachment 1. This item establishes the traffic and parking regulations and fees to be assessed and collected for the upcoming year. The proposed regulations have incorporated a couple housekeeping changes to update our effective dates, clarify the requirement for displaying a license plate facing the driving aisle, and also update language regarding the disposition of abandoned bikes, really to reference our existing policy on surplus property for consistency. The substantive changes included in the proposed regulations are to change the appeals process to address frivolous appeals. In the past fiscal year, we had over 4,000 appeals filed, and there's a high evidence, really simply by the note of the stated appeal reason, that a lot of these are filed to delay paying the fine. So what is proposed and incorporated into the proposed regulations is that the first two appeals would continue the same. They would file the appeal. The payment would be delayed until the appeal process was finalized. If the appeal was granted, they would not pay the fine. But if not granted, then the fine would be paid at the end of the appeals process. The third and additional appeals filed after that time, they would pay the fine at the time of filing the appeal, and then if the appeal is granted, the money would be returned to them. The second substantive change is to propose a 3% increase in permit fees. This is consistent with the continued growth plan introduced when there was a 5-year outlook of parking fees. There was no increase in the permit fees last fiscal year, and we are also proposing to hold the permit fees flat for our satellite lots, with just a minimal increase for the other permit plans. And the revenue generated from the fee increase is estimated to be about $110,000, and this would be to continue our maintenance and growth efforts. We continue to have increases in our maintenance, seal coat, asphalt costs. While those continue to escalate, our Parking Services and Operations Division is also looking at alternative maintenance methods. Some of these have a higher upfront cost but lower lifetime cost, so some of those are being studied this summer. I also just wanted to provide an update of everything that our Traffic and Parking Services has done over the past year. I also asked our director, Eric Crouch, to be here because I really appreciate all of his efforts that he has put into running this department. This past year, they introduced a free-range bicycle concept, which allows bicycles on sidewalks except in designated areas. And Texas Tech last fall was designated as a bicycle-friendly campus, bronze level, actually the first in Texas. Our Transportation and Parking Services Group was also awarded the Innovative Organization of the Year by the National Parking Association. This year, they also developed and introduced electronic citations to eliminate paper citations. We also licensed our parking management software that was developed by our staff to New Park LLC for commercialization. Project updates, they have continued to expand lots for accommodating our increased growth in students and faculty, as well as our additional buildings. So they expanded the library parking lot to accommodate more spaces. They expanded lots for the new petroleum engineering building. We're working to add additional spaces in the Southwest Collections lot for Remnant Trust. And they expanded the park and pay meter system. The total investment over the past couple years has been $220,000 with an expected annual revenue generated from this of $150,000. Coming up this next year, we continue to have additional projects. They will work on accommodating additional spaces or converting the commuter parking lot for the new West Village Residence Hall, reconfiguring parking near the old Animal Science and Fisheries buildings to recoup space lost to the plant and soil science expansion, as well as completing a parking lot north of the University Greenhouse now that that underpass is closed, and looking at the design of the dead end of Indiana Avenue due to the freeway construction. We continue to invest in maintenance and addressing the continued growth at our institution. That really concludes the quick summary of the past year's projects and our upcoming projects, but we'd welcome any questions you may have.
Okay. Thank you, Ms. Sloan. At this time, I'd like to call on Mr. Brunges to talk about the debt service coverage on the parking garages and where we are from a permitting standpoint on that.
Yes, the debt service on the parking garages runs a little bit over $3 million a year. Currently, we're funding with this budget, we will be bringing that to about, from parking revenue in the garage, we'll be funding that to a level of about $1.5 million. Our goal has been to get to at least 50% funding by the people parking in the garage. The rest of that parking is subsidized by the general parking system as we go forward. So that's the status of that.
How much longer?
About 13, 14 years. It was about a 15 million plus.
So we're holding permitting costs in the satellite campuses to provide the students that are on a budget an opportunity or a place to park, and then we're going to increase the price.
Yes, we talked with Vice President Sloan and Eric Crouch, and they both went back, sharpened their pencils, and the satellite parking, about 1,500 spaces is going to remain at the same price.
Thank you, sir.
And if I may just add, this proposal has also been discussed with our faculty senate, staff senate, and student senate, and there's no issues. They were supportive of the proposal.
Thank you. Is there a motion to approve item number 1 as presented?
I'll move. Excellent report. It's like, I mean, I'm impressed with everything that's taking place, a lot of activity, so
Second.
Congratulations.
Hearing a motion and a second on item number 1. All those in favor say aye. Aye. Those opposed? Motion carries. Mr. Huffaker, please present item number 2.
This used to be a huge area of the students are all upset.
If I could introduce Eric Crouch too. He's really the person behind all the hard work that goes into
Mr. Chairman, as the board is aware, with respect to our many physicians that are employed by the Texas Tech University Health Science Centers, they are self-insured with respect to a self-insurance liability plan that we operate. And with respect to that plan, The plan document itself is the insurance document, if you would. And our changes that we propose to that plan are attachment to your agenda book. The changes, first, are cosmetic in the sense that we need to revise the language to indicate that the plan clearly ensures both Texas Tech University Health Science Center and the Texas Tech University Health Science Center at El Paso. We've also changed the definition of the medical malpractice claim to the terminology that's used in the Texas statute, and that is a healthcare liability claim, to make it clear that that is what we are insuring with respect to the liability. And then we have revised to make clear that with respect to the sort of claim that this would cover, is that it would only cover suits that are filed within the United States or its territories. That's a matter of some just clarification. So what we're asking is approval of the revised language with respect to the self-insurance liability plan.
So moved. Second. Okay, hearing the motion in a second, all those in favor say aye. Aye. Those opposed? Motion carries.
None of the other financial parameters, none of that changes, just housekeeping stuff primarily.
Does not change the coverage limits at all, or who is covered.
Any further questions, comments? Mr. Chairman, this concludes the meeting of the Finance and Administration Committee.
Thank you, Mr. Steinmetz. We will now move to the ACS committee. Chairman Neal, please continue.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. The Academic, Clinical, and Student Affairs Committee is called to order. I would entertain a motion to approve the minutes of the meeting held on February 27th, 2014. Are no questions, comments? The minutes are approved. Dr. Allen, will you please begin with item number 1?
Thank you, Madam Chair. The Chancellor concurs with the recommendation of the President that the Board of Regents approve the new degree plan request from ASU for a Bachelor of Science in Civil Engineering to be housed in the Department of Physics and Geosciences within the College of Arts and Sciences, and thereby authorize submission of appropriate materials to the Texas Higher Education Coordinating Board and SAC-COC, seeking approval for such a program. This proposed BSCE builds on Angelo State University's highly successful STEM programs. Those include mathematics, computer science, geoscience, and physics. With sufficient support in place, ASU seeks to leverage these strong programs to create the proposed degree. Additionally, we enjoy significant community support for the proposed degree, particularly among firms willing to employ our civil engineers to provide student internships. The addition of the proposed degree also offers opportunities for HSI grants and transfer agreements unavailable without this degree plan, something we currently involved in pursuing. Bolstering the need for such a program is the employment data from the Bureau of Labor Statistics. Employment of civil engineers is projected to grow some 20% by year 2020, according to the Bureau. This growth is nearly double the rate of projected growth for all occupations. These strong employment projections, together with significant and growing local economic dependency on engineering occupations, make the pursuit of the proposed degree a vital part of ASU's commitment to servicing its area as a regional comprehensive. New faculty are required for this degree, as is additional equipment and materials, and new construction will be required, with total costs identified through the first 5 years. It says 4, but it means through the 5 years, of $6.7 million. Funding is to be secured through private sources, federal grants, and institutional support.
I'd like to call on Dr. May to address this before we open it up for questions.
This was a particular program that I pointed out during our planning session that I enjoyed, and it's something that I think is a moment that at Angelo State we consider this as a bellwether moment that we could go to the next level by offering engineering. And it's something that other regional institutions have enjoyed for quite some time, and we would like to join that. We think we have the resources to do so. I did report to Regent Neal as well as Chairman Long that just last week we received a large donation towards this effort, and it was very significant. A donor gave us $4.5 million. So,
Great.
and I think we're well on our way, but obviously we come before you today to seek your support as well, and we would like to take this to the coordinating board with a very strong proposal.
Other questions or comments?
I remember the discussion and think it's an excellent
Yeah.
way for.
We've come a
so,
long
and
way.
I support it,
Short
and
amount
make
of
the,
time.
make that nomination,
Madam
recommendation.
Chair, I would just like to commend you, Dr. May, on thinking outside the box.
Absolutely.
I think it's a great opportunity for kids in that region. And I know you work with Dr. Nellis as well in Texas Tech on gaining, collaborating support. And I've been wondering when you were going to do something. I'd like to congratulate you.
But, you know, I would like to mention, like what Dwayne talked about, Angelo State or the Texas Tech system is answering every single charge that Commissioner Paredes brought forward. Living learning communities, paired courses. We're leading that way, both at Angelo State and at Texas Tech. And I think you should know that. And there are other schools who look at us. And we're working with K through 12 teachers, not only in math, but in English as well at Angelo State. And so this is a part of it. In this proposal, we're also providing a grant proposal to HSI, which will take the type of children that he's talking about, economic disadvantage, in Eagle Pass. And we're making a direct conduit to them. I even took their parents and showed them that 277 goes 3 hours later, you're in San Angelo. And they understand that. And we're going to create a pathway with the Carr Foundation that they can come and get this done for practically nothing and be engineers. So.
One quick question on, this program is expected for fall 2015, and I know that it has to come back to the board for approval for funding purposes. So on target, when would you get this come back? When would you identify all the funds or your track?
What I'm asking for today is to supersede that and do that, get that funding approval today.
Everything. And
Because
so
he's already
with the intention
raised it.
that we know that there will be some maybe perhaps federal grants coming and.
Right. Well, in consultation with Mr. Brunges, we discussed it. In light that we got no more donations or we were unsuccessful in grants, the institution is prepared to step up for the rest of it.
Want to be clear about that. Okay.
Right, we're Dr. May and I had some real good discussions about the fact we're 2/3 of the way there. There's good prospects from both the grant side and perhaps subsequent gifts. We feel very confident, and then we have the backup plan for institutional funds.
Dr. May, was this one ask, one gift? I mean, is that the
Yes.
first person you approached?
Yes.
Go for it.
Go for it.
And just for clarification, this is for a bachelor's degree?
Yes.
And can you discuss whether you would go
What
further?
I would like to see, as I told y'all in our planning reports, is that, 3 or 4 years down the road, we would expand this into mechanical engineering. But we would act primarily as a feeder school at the graduate level for Texas Tech.
That's what I wanted to say.
For graduate engineering and research And I think, there's so many programs that we share right now, especially in physics. We supply a good number of physics students coming from Angelo State to Texas Tech, not only to go into physics, but also in graduate engineering programs as well.
Any other questions or comments from anyone?
And he
Matt?
slipped me another note saying he really likes the Beatles.
He's getting there.
Get his donor to get you some tickets.
Christina may share with him.
Motion's been made and seconded. All in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Motion carries. Congratulations.
Yeah, they do.
That's really bringing that fast.
Good job, Ryan.
Thank you.
Great job.
Where's my script? Okay, I lost it. I know, I'm just looking for it so I can behave. Dr. Skubinek, would you please come, he was going to wait for me to call his name. Please present item number 2.
Madam Chair, Chairman Long, members of the board, the Chancellor concurs with the recommendation of the President that the Board of Regents approve the granting of tenure to the following faculty at Texas Tech University. Brent Lindquist will be our new Dean in the College of Arts and Sciences and will be appointed as a professor in the Department of Mathematics and Statistics and the Department of Geosciences. Professor Lindquist is currently the Deputy Provost at State University of New York at Stony Brook and in the Department of Applied Mathematics and Statistics. Angela Lumpkin will be the new Professor and Chair in the Department of Health, Exercise, and Sports Science in the College of Arts and Sciences. She's currently a tenured professor in the Department of Health, Sport, and Exercise Science at the University of Kansas, where she was formerly the Dean of the School of Education, and previously she had been a chair at North Carolina State University. Mark Sheridan joined Texas Tech in March 2015 as our new Dean of the Graduate School and Vice Provost for Graduate Affairs. He was previously a tenured professor at North Dakota State University, where he also served as an Associate Dean in the College of Graduate and Interdisciplinary Studies. The faculty members whose names have been listed here have been judged by the appropriate committees and administrative personnel as worthy of academic tenure. Approval of these individuals would bring the number of tenured faculty at Texas Tech to 758, which is 70% of our tenured and tenure-track faculty.
Thank you, Dr. Skubinek. Are there any questions or comments? Is there a motion to approve? So moved.
Second.
All those in favor say yes? Yes. I was going to say aye. Those disapproving, say no. Thank you. Dr. Skubinek, please continue with item number 3.
The Chancellor concurs with the recommendation of the President that the Board of Regents approve the creation of the Department of Teacher Education in the College of Education and authorize the Office of the Provost and Senior Vice President to inform the Texas Higher Education Coordinating Board of this administrative change. This item is particularly relevant to the comments that the Commissioner made earlier today. And it has its genesis in a new program that started a couple of years ago called Tech Teach, established in the College of Education. It's a reformed education program. It's just gone through a rigorous review by the Council for the Accreditation of Education Preparation, and also the Texas Education Agency has also reviewed that program, and it's been cited as a national example of a model program for the enhancement of teacher education, much more rigorous than what was previously the case. Teacher preparation had been in the Department of Curriculum and Instruction. That's a large growing program, and now it can be more dedicated to its mission and curriculum studies. And teacher preparation will then be the focus of this new program. This new program will ensure high standards in the teacher education program and the longevity of these reforms with a more faculty interest in those areas. This administrative change is viewed to be revenue neutral. I should say cost neutral.
I have to admit, I did not realize we didn't have a teacher education department. It's just been embraced in all these other ways.
It was part of curriculum
That's interesting.
and instruction.
Great. Any other questions or comments? We have a motion to approve. All those in favor say aye. Opposed, say no. Motion carries. Dr. Burke, Dr. Burke, would you please come forward and present your items?
The Chancellor concurs with the recommendation of the President that the Board of Regents approve the granting of tenure to Volker Neugebauer. He's coming in as an appointment as Professor and Chair of the School of Medicine's Department of Pharmacology and Neuroscience. He already has tenure at the University of Texas Medical Branch and holds the position of Vice Chair for the Department of Neuroscience there. He comes in with 3 NIH grants, of which he's the PI, and a 4th grant. He's an expert in many different areas of neuroscience and has had a history of very good collaboration with departments of neurology and other clinicians. So we're excited about him joining us.
Great. Any questions or comments? We have a motion to approve. All those in favor, please say aye. Opposed, say no. Motion carries. Dr. Burke?
The next is a recommendation to confer the title of Professor Emeritus to 6 different individuals. All have had a long and faithful service as a very distinguished career as well. Very quickly, they are Kathy Chauncey in the Department of Family Medicine. She has been our leading educator in nutrition, eating disorders, diabetes, and obesity assessment since 1992. Dr. Paul Dothit, who has been with us since 1989 in the Department of Pediatrics, doing outpatient psychotherapy for children, developed expertise in this area. Dr. Barry Lombardini, who joined us after being at Johns Hopkins, came to Texas Tech in 1973 in the Department of Pharmacology and has been an excellent teacher and received numerous teaching awards over all these years. Dr. Reed Norman, who came to us as an assistant professor of anatomy in 1983, was appointed chair of the Department of Pharmacology and Neuroscience in 2002, and has held that chair until now, when Dr. Neugebauer will take over. Also has a distinguished research career. Dr. Barbara Pence, who got her BA, master's degree in micro, PhD in experimental pathology and nutrition, and MBA from Texas Tech, then joined the Department of Pathology as an assistant professor in 1987. She's had $10 million of research grants, mostly in the genetics of neoplasia. And Dr. Doug Stacco, who everyone knows has had a very distinguished career in research since 1974, has received the Dean's President and Chancellor's Research Award, is a Grover Murray Distinguished Professor, and has made some very important breakthroughs in the field of steroid research. So we are requesting emeritus status for those 6 faculty members who are retiring.
You're losing 6 outstanding faculty, Dr. Mitchell. Questions or comments?
These are outstanding individuals, and we certainly thank them for their service and for their long tenure here and what they've contributed to our educational initiatives. So I so move.
All those in favor say aye, with
Aye.
regret. Those opposed say no. Motion carries. As I understand, we're pulling item number 6 from consideration at this time. So with that said, Mr. Chairman, this concludes the meeting of the Academic, Clinical, and Student Affairs Committee.
Thank you. Chairman Francis, call the committee.
The Audit Committee is called to order. I would entertain a motion to approve the minutes of the meeting held on February 27th of this year.
So moved. That's you.
Second.
We have a motion and a second. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Carries. Ms. Turner, would you please present item number 1?
Yes, thank you. I want to talk about a couple of reports today. The first one is a report on Health Sciences Center laboratory safety. This is a sister audit to the audit that we performed at Texas Tech University earlier. The objectives of our audit involved both operational aspects and the governance structure of the laboratory safety processes. TTU HSC's Division of Safety Services covers all of the Health Sciences Center campuses, with the head of the Safety Services office being located here in Lubbock. And while there's a campus safety officer on every campus, the reporting lines of these individuals can get very complicated. At every regional campus except El Paso, the safety officer dually reports to the Director of Safety Services in Lubbock and to their campus Assistant VP for Finance Administration on that campus. In El Paso, the lines get even more complicated, where the safety officer has reporting lines to 3 people in El Paso in addition to the person, the Director of Safety Services in Lubbock. While all these people have reporting lines to Lubbock, to the Safety Services Director, most of them do not recognize that as a reporting line and instead consider only their campus reporting line to be the one that they adhere to. So some of the operational issues we saw really circle back to governance questions, complicated and unclear reporting lines. A couple of examples. In Abilene, the campus selected and made an officer to an individual for a campus unit manager position, and that position includes responsibilities for safety services. They did not consult the Lubbock Director of Safety Services, and when he examined the person's qualifications, he noticed that they were missing required licenses and training that would have allowed them to serve in the position of safety officer. The campus then rescinded that offer and hired an individual who did have the appropriate licenses and training. As another example, in El Paso, one of the campus safety officers rewrote the policies related to the BSL-3 lab in El Paso and postponed a required shutdown of that lab. The policy revisions were not approved by the Director of Safety Services in Lubbock. So these are just a couple of examples of just communication issues and the difficulty that arose in that area. And so we actually split this audit into 2 reports. You'll see in your book the first 2 reports are both about laboratory safety. The first report is the governance report that we issued to Dr. Mitchell, just that he consider the organizational structure of safety services to see whether there were improvements that could be made. Initially, Dr. Mitchell and his senior leadership team, including Mr. Cavan and Dr. Kahn, determined that they would move safety services under the umbrella for the Vice President for Research. However, in deploying that change, they realized that there are also safety concerns outside of research. For example, if a big crack develops in the sidewalk that's a tripping hazard, that's obviously not a research issue, but it is a safety issue. So now they've developed sort of a triage process so that individual safety issues can be directed either to the physical plant or to the research area, depending on what those issues are to be corrected. Lines have also been clarified to the campus safety services officers so they very clearly understand their reporting line back to the Director of Safety Services here in Lubbock. And then we reported on some other operational findings like standardizing safety inspection processes, updating policies and procedures, strengthening chemical procurement and inventory processes. We reported those to the Director of Safety Services, and he has begun implementation of those changes. The other audit that I want to briefly discuss is the next audit in the book, which is an export control audit at TTU. And we have this one on the audit plan as well for all of the for TTU HSC and TTU, as well as TTU HSC El Paso. Export controls are federal laws and regulations that restrict the flow of certain materials, devices, and technical information outside of the United States. These regulations are designed to help protect national security and U.S. economic competitiveness. They're established in a series of regs by various federal agencies, which include the Department of State, the Commerce Department, Department of the Treasury, Nuclear Regulatory Commission, and the Department of Energy. As examples, faculty and students who are citizens of certain countries, such as Iran or China, are not permitted to access certain types of research involving technology, engineering, biohazards, or other things, for instance. They're really much broader than that, but that's an example. Also, faculty and students who do work on those kinds of research or have access to that sort of material and information are prohibited from taking certain types of information out of the country, for example, on laptops, hard drives, iPads, or whatever. An export is the actual shipment or transmission of items, services, or technical data that is subject to these regulations out of the United States. But there is also a deemed export, which is the release of any of this kind of information to a foreign national inside of the United States. As TTU's research efforts grow, so does the importance of a well-functioning compliance program. Dr. Nellis brought up export controls as a question to me shortly after he arrived at Texas Tech, and that's largely the reason why it's on our annual audit plan for this year. While the university has established an operating policy and some limited procedures, there are other high-risk exposures. They may not be high probability of occurrence, but it's high risk if they did occur. Exposures that are not covered by the current policies and procedures. With his research specialty of quantum physics and his background, which includes time spent at the Sandia National Laboratories, Dr. Rob Duncan, TTU's new Vice President for Research, has significant expertise and experience in this area, and he's been very proactive. He recently hired a new director of translational research and entrepreneurialism. He hired a lawyer that was previously in General Counsel's office, and her role will include coordinating and actively managing the university's export control program. We will perform a follow-up audit next year, and I have no doubt that Dr. Duncan and his team will have this program up to speed. And I wanted also to, there you are, to have Dr. Duncan come and give you a brief update on laboratory safety efforts at Texas Tech University.
Thank you, Regent Francis, too, for the charge to continue to develop our plan for improved comprehensive laboratory safety, which has been summarized in our response to the audit. And all elements of this have been put into effect since the last meeting of the board. We have issued a memo with the President and the Provost instructing every member of our community to remove themselves from any unsafe activity and report it to Environment, Health, and Safety. And have done a number of other things to up the safety awareness of the campus. Among other things, we've started a new program in chemical tracking with Fisher Scientific and with a new type of chemical gateway program that actually barcodes every chemical that's purchased and put into place on campus. So these are tracked. It assures the proper usage of the chemicals and also the proper inventory for their disposal at the completion of their use. We've also been involved in increasing our laboratory surveys. In fact, this year already in FY14, we're up over 15% in the total number of laboratories visited by our Environment, Health, and Safety. In fact, we're up to about 400 now, again, up considerably from FY13. We've also mandated online safety training, and that rate of training has increased dramatically. In your packets, there's this report on activities at TTU to improve laboratory safety, and in that it shows this quite dramatic increase in the rate of which training occurs in safety. And now these trainings and assessments of faculty and staff understanding of safety is part of the employee record. So this has also become tracked centrally as a credential of our faculty and staff. There's also a large acceptance of the safety efforts of our faculty and staff as part of their tenure promotion tracking activities. So we're getting a very good integration of this into our overall academic program. Thank you.
I'd just like to say that we highlighted this at our last meeting, and this is an example of how the tech community cares for each other, how our faculty and staff care for the students, because with the leadership of Dr. Duncan and Dr. Skubanek, I mean, there was a call to arms, there was action plans, and I believe in my heart that we will go from a system that had some issues that were reported nationally to a system that is a leader in the United States in lab safety based on what is taking place right now. So thank you all very, very much. Dr. Nellis, your leadership is very much appreciated in this, and I think we will all be proud of what will take place at Texas Tech University and in the Health Science Center area over the next 12 months. I mean,
thank you, sir.
I appreciate, the board appreciate you singling this out as a vital oversight that this board needed to be made aware of, and that was very needful on your part, and we appreciate that.
Thank you. Just a couple more things I wanted to let you know about. I've canceled a couple of audits that were on our annual audit plan. One is the audit that I had on there for El Paso laboratory safety. I canceled that because we really covered it within the audit that we just did because of the organizational structure. And then the other one is an audit of Office of Research Services at Texas Tech University. That office is undergoing some significant reorganization. Dr. Duncan is reorganizing pre-award and post-award processes, and so people are changing, processes are changing. They're also implementing software, and it's not a great time to go in and be mucking around with an audit. The State Auditor's Office has let us know that, as we have for the past number of years, Texas Tech University's student financial aid federal awards will be included in the statewide A133 audit, and research and development will also be included in a limited scope engagement. They have not, state auditors has not looked at the R&D federal research cluster in a long time at TTU. And then they're also going to be following up on Health Sciences Center recommendations from last year in student financial aid. And finally, TTU right now is in the midst of a state auditor's office audit of historically underutilized businesses, a hub audit. That's ongoing. Lastly, CPRIT has required that all grant awardees go back and audit fiscal years 10, 11, 12, and 13 awards to make sure they were used in compliance with CPRIT requirements. They're allowing internal auditors to do the work for fiscal years 10, 11, and 12. However, they're having institutions hire independent auditors to audit fiscal year 13 under the same parameters. We've completed our audits of the first 3 years, and you have those in your book. We've hired Bollinger Seegers, Gilbert & Moss, which is a Lubbock CPA firm. It's a big Lubbock firm. They actually do the foundation audit here at Texas Tech University, as well as some other work. We've hired them to do the fiscal year 13 audit. That work will be completed and submitted on time to the CPRIT by June 13th. That concludes my report.
Thank you, Kim. Any questions?
Questions?
The committee will recess for a lunch break and will reconvene in approximately 30 minutes for the purpose of convening into an executive session of the audit committee.
Lunch break.
Into open session. There are no action items to consider from executive session, and this concludes the meeting of the audit committee.
Good timing.
Thank you, Chairman Francis. We will now move to facilities. Chairman Montford.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. The Facilities Committee is called to order, and I'd entertain a motion to approve the minutes of the meeting held on February 27th, 2014. Thank you. Do I hear a second? Do I hear a second? Second. Okay. All in favor? Any opposed? Thank you. Michael, would you please begin with item number 1?
Yes, ma'am. Before I dive into items 1 through 5 are actually the MP1 reports, which, as a reminder, are due every May annually, and they're a requirement by the THECB. So this is not an internal process. We're just complying with the state requirement to support a vision of what they call 5-year capital projects plan. So those are for all components as well as the system. So I'm going to talk through those. Just remember that. A couple other key points. Very common practice. Matter of fact, every institution in the state, they actually make a list for more than 5 years. They really kind of put their all-in capital list as they know at that time. So when you look at these lists, they might seem quite long and extensive. Basically, we're not saying we're going to build all that in 5 years. We just want to be very transparent about what the vision is. Ours specifically ties to the chancellor's and all the president's vision, strategic planning, as it relates to capital growth to support their institutions in the system. So it just allows a clear documentation of the strategic planning. You might see some projects on, I'll point them out as we go through, and I'll try to be brief, that are already under construction or already approved. The reason for that is there's no jeopardy there. We don't pull them off of our list until we actually receive the letter back from our submission to the THECB confirming they've received it and documented it. Then it rolls off our list. So that's another point. And then the other one is these numbers do show some cost escalation from the previous submission last year, truing up about 2.5 years of cost increases in the design, construction, commodities industry. So with that, item 1 is Angelo State University's approve the 5-year capital projects plan and authorize submission of the MP1 report. The list is 7 items for ASU, about $102 million. I won't dive into any of these unless you would like to ask questions. Dr. May and I could answer as needed.
Michael, I know we've asked this many times on this capital plan, but this is a fluid document. Items can come on or off as we so choose, correct?
That's a great point. This is really, the state requires just let's document what you see as a vision. We can even augment the numbers up or down as needed as scope becomes more refined and defined. Yes, sir.
Dr. May, do you have any comments about? Okay. Thank you. Second? Thank you very much. Any other discussion? If none, all in favor? Any opposed? Motion carries.
Excuse me, Madam
I'm
Chair,
sorry.
if I voted, I didn't need to be voting.
We'll take your vote anytime. We'll take your vote anytime.
Senior moment.
When in doubt, always vote. Michael, please continue with item number 2.
Okay, item 2 is to approve the 5-year capital projects plan and authorize submission of the MP1 report for Texas Tech University. Texas Tech has 29 items totaling about $616.6 million. These tie in order, and I didn't mention earlier that the institutions go through a pretty detailed process, and we assist with cost modeling in terms of prioritization and what actually is current to their priority list for the next 5 years. So this does change a little bit, as I mentioned earlier. For instance, on this first slide, items 3 and 6 and 7 are projects that are currently underway. They just haven't rolled off the list yet, but you know that they're still included in the submission to the THECB. Second page, items 15 and 16, we're actually coming to the board on number 15 and 16 today, later in this session for approval on those items. And then you'll notice, let me back up one. Excuse me, let me go to this one. Items 14, 18, 23, 24, and 25, all are related to athletics. And just a quick comment, and Mr. Hokut's here as well to talk about that if needed. We are in the middle of visioning Jones Stadium, South End Zone, football, track functions. So this is a shot at documenting best-known data today. They're very conservative, meaning safe, large numbers on those items, and we are in the middle of designing conceptual ideas for those solutions. So those numbers will probably go down, but they represent kind of a high case scenario in terms of cost.
So I see item 25 and I visualize the Coliseum as our indoor track. It's a good use for that place.
It actually has been discussed. Part of
It's got Rick Francis' name.
Hopefully, if we
You asked for it.
use the existing building, we won't have to spend $45 million.
It's a rowdy group today, I'm sorry.
Okay, I can dive into that or not at your request. Okay. We have analyzed that, doesn't work too well. So that's the total of the Texas Tech University capital projects plan to submit to the THECB.
Okay, President Nellis, or do you have any comments with regards to the list? Okay, and Mr. Hokut, if there are any questions with regards to the athletic piece of this? Okay, just want to be sure if you've got questions. So if no more questions, I'll ask for a motion to approve.
Second.
Thank you. Any other discussion? If none, all in favor? Any opposed? Motion approved. Mr. Molina, let's go to the next item.
Okay,
Health
item
Sciences
3.
Center.
Item 3, Texas Tech University Health Sciences Center approved the 5-year capital projects plan and submission of the MP1 report. The HSC Lubbock has about $485.3 million worth of construction and planning and design. Not a lot of comment here except on one, which is item 10. Dr. Mitchell might want to weigh in. That is the dental school building in terms of geographic location and this placeholder here.
Okay, please. President Mitchell? He still has, I know he wants to have the tickets. Forget him right now.
No, with the middle school building, we have get past state issues, the way we'll look at the dental school building is we'll basically, within our own university system, put it out to bid. You know, El Paso, Abilene, Amarillo, you know, just whatever we can do to have it happen. It's on, you know, it has to be on the list in order to be able to move that direction. We did have an issue with the coordinating board this last session where a study was done with Baylor College of Dentistry, UT Health Science Center San Antonio, and UT Health Science Center Houston, said we don't need a new dental school, which was different than the report that we'd had from 2008. And so one of our first orders of business with the next session is to make sure that they understand the need in general for dental school. And then past that, that you see the building cost there, the cost of a dental school is like the cost of a medical school. It's exceedingly expensive. So, but whether it's, again, the issue with this is we have this under TTU HSC, but now that we have TTU HSC El Paso, right, it'll be either one. So,
Ted, you may cover this tomorrow in your remarks. So I see the VA clinic there. Is that still got life?
And I think with what has happened nationally, just in the last few weeks with things, it actually helps our cause tremendously.
The bill's passed the House, it's in the Senate, and it's being held up. But before the election, I think there'll be enough pressure from both parties that they will pass something, and I think we'll be in that bill.
Would this be our participation, or what is this 64 million, or is that just an overall no funding streams identified?
Yeah, that'll be the cost of doing the building. And at this point in time, we have different options for how we're doing it. We've discussed the various options, either from a public-private partnership, having the University Medical Center build it, all the way to having the feds build it. So it's open anyway with it right now.
VA.
That's right, to keep it on our list as a project.
And how we fund
If it fell back to us to build, we'd need to have it on our list to do.
Gotcha.
Dr. Mitchell, on item 10, just as a point of clarity, the 76 million is that cost basis was for Lubbock, Texas, on the campus at HSC. That would obviously adjust wherever that ends up being specific to that geographic location.
Okay. You have a question? Do you want to pose it? No. Okay. Any other discussion? So I will, if there's no other discussion, ask for a motion.
So moved.
And if no other discussion, all those in favor, say aye. Any opposed? Motion carries. Mr. Molina, please continue.
Item 4 is Texas Tech University Health Science Center at El Paso. This is the first time we've had this presentation. It's always been embedded with the HSC as whole. So this is to approve the 5-year capital projects plan and authorize submission of the MP1 report. There's 6 total items on the list today, $206.8 million. These you have seen before on previous lists. And a side note, when you see real property purchase, it doesn't mean we know exactly what we're trying to buy or each institution. It's a placeholder to provide latitude for the institution to have movement from a land basis standpoint and geographically with their campuses. So they're not tied specific to a property. They are there for flexibility and growth.
That's where Senior Frog was.
That's part of it.
That's part of it. That's part of it.
Now it's a part
That's
of it.
gone. That's
Senior
gone.
Frogs was the very north end of that strip, and one of the things that we need to be moving on is the purchase of those things.
So moved.
Okay?
We did. Oh, yeah.
Okay.
It's gone.
Thank you very much. Any other discussion? If none, all in favor? Okay, any opposed? Motion carries.
We moved on.
It's done. Mr. Molina, please continue on item number 5.
Okay, Texas Tech University System Administration also approved the 5-year capital projects plan and authorized submission of the MP1 report. This greatly varies from the previous years where there were maybe potential phased renovations to an existing building. This will be item 11, which we'll talk about in a little bit in the facilities agenda, but this is just approving that there is now a new system office building on the capital projects plan at $27.5 million.
Any questions? Entertain motion to approve? Thank you. Any discussion? If none, all in favor? Any opposed? None. Motion carries. Mr. Molina, please continue with item 6.
Item 6, Angelo State University approved the use of the revenue finance system to install synthetic turf on the intramural fields. As a point of reference for you who are not real familiar with the campus, this is the east, it's east of Jackson Street where the star is and the dashed red line. That is the portion which will be turned into the synthetic turf fields. The purpose and scope of work is basically converting an area of natural grass, which there was laughter about that earlier due to the water. It's not really natural grass, it's basically hard pan, and the field to a matrix synthetic turf facility. This is unique because it really combines 5 different sport utilizations or styles of intramural: soccer, rugby, flag football, 4-on-4 flag football, and softball. So it'll have a lot of unique striping, et cetera. The new site utilities, repaired some existing utilities to make that all work properly. And the basis from the institution is really to convert it necessary due to extreme drought conditions, low water usability, and it's just, in some cases, just not very safe to be playing on for our students. The recommendation today is to authorize the president to use the RFS system to fund installation of this synthetic turf, with a total project budget of $1.9 million and award a construction contract. And the project will be funded by the revenue finance system. Debt service will be repaid with outdoor facility conservation fee, and the debt will be repaid over a 7-year period.
Could you clarify the outdoor facility conservation fee? Is that at just ASU, or is that a system-wide
Say that one
fee?
more. I didn't hear
Well,
you.
it's with the it's repaid. Okay, outdoor facility conservation
And we've already
fee?
approved that, right?
Yes, okay. Got it? Okay, we just want to be sure that, where that was embedded.
Are you trying to, Dr. May, are you trying to get a donor on that?
Yes.
Okay.
This was, it's for intramurals, and so it's not really a fan-based event or sport. And we felt this is the best way to do it. The kids our students wanted it, and they voted to have this fee because they want to be able to play on a surface like this. It's fantastic.
Any other discussion? Entertain a motion?
Second.
No other discussion. All in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? Motion carries. Item number 7.
Item 7 is to approve name at Texas Tech University, approve naming of the new student housing complex. This is the current construction at the Tech Parkway and 19th Street. That's this property here, to be named the West Village. In a point of clarity, the point is not to name every building West Village, it's the complex, so that it provides fundraising opportunities or naming opportunities for these facilities to be the Susan Jones Residence Hall at West Village. Susan Jones was just an example. So anyway, so it could be named up to as many buildings as we decide to name. In floor plan, there's basically 4 footprints, but building A is connected at the 2nd, 3rd, and 4th levels. So the recommendation today is to change the name to West Village. The primary purpose is wayfinding for students and mapping coming up in August, and have some point of demarc and denotation so people can find this place on the campus maps and communication within the institution. Dr. Nellis, any comments? Okay.
Make reference to this facility. And it generally has a village kind of concept, and people have referred to it as the West Residence, so West Village seems to make sense.
One question. So if we're going to name this doesn't prevent us from finding a donor name that could be added to this at whatever point in time that donor might be identified.
And you're saying
Okay.
building A, we have to name building B. And the whole complex we have to use.
And this is kind of a change.
Mhm.
We had a tradition of naming our residence halls after former presidents and things, and so we're really moving more for revenue opportunities there.
Yes.
And so, similar to what we did at the United and the Talkington, so I applaud you.
This will need to be split up because if 54 million, somebody had to come up with 27. No one's going to give 27 when they can give 27 and get a school name.
Right, yeah,
I
absolutely.
mean, if they get a school of the arts and sciences, then they're not going to give up 27 on this. So by breaking it up in separate buildings, and building A can be split up in what, 3?
Three, as the plan shows, it's the three yellow boxes.
In the village, Wayne had the suggestion on that, and I thought it was very good, and that'll be for a while until we can find someone.
Kansas West Village sounds pretty good.
You gotta let Hans get out and make some money.
He's gonna be busy on item 11.
Any other questions or comments? If none, I'll entertain a motion to approve.
Aye.
Thank you. I have no other discussion. All in favor? Any opposed? None, so motion carries.
Madam Chair, can I ask Michael?
Yeah,
a quick
certainly.
question? Michael, is the building going to be ready for occupancy in August?
Yes, I'll talk about that here in the FP&C.
Okay, good. Okay.
Yes, sir.
Okay, so item number 8.
Okay, item 8 is also at Texas Tech University, approve a project to renovate the United Spirit Arena. And I'll just talk about the scope, and there's some other items related to gifting and renaming, et cetera, that I will not address, but the Chancellor and/or Kirby Hoka probably could. This project has been on the list for quite some time. It really hits about 7 key areas: men's basketball, sports medicine, and nutrition, women's basketball, women's volleyball, the team corridor, and the west lobby. And basically, it's a complete retrofit of these spaces to get them up to current grade standards. Some of these are in pretty rough shape. Concrete block walls that are painted, et cetera. So it'll be much good vision by the athletic department to really keep at this one. It's a $4.3 million initiative with the total project budget broken down as shown on the screen. I did want to make a point that we are asking your approval to waive the landscape enhancement in public art due to it being basically in the basement of the building. Not a whole lot of opportunity to do those kind of things inside there. So the recommendation on the floor today is to authorize us to proceed with the plan, design, and renovate the USA and with a project budget of $4.3 million, waive the landscape enhancement, public art, report it to the THECB, and award a design-build contract. The project will be funded with taxable debt through the revenue finance system, repaid with funds from a naming agreement. The design budget of $4.3 million includes the previously approved budget of $325. We had some planning money that we utilized, not all of that, but just a little small portion of that to get to this point. So, there's any questions?
Kirby, does this include, on the picture, if you wouldn't mind going back to the drawing, does that include the extra gym, the purple?
No, sir, that is the current basketball practice facility.
Oh, now.
So we will enhance the graphics and the appearance, the aesthetics of that.
So we're not adding a gym, a workout facility?
Not at this time.
Is there a new scoreboard in any of this?
Not in this plan, but that is a need that we continue to look forward to addressing.
We're really dated.
And jumbo.
Yeah, we need the jumbo tron.
Well, it's pretty modest what we
Got to sell a jumbotron.
Nancy, it's a naming opportunity for you. Any other questions?
No, ma'am.
Okay. If none, I'll entertain a motion to approve. If no other discussion, all in favor? If none, opposed? If none, motion passes. Mr. Molina, could you please continue with item number 9?
Item 9, also at Texas Tech, to approve a project to construct new synthetic turf intramural recreation fields. To give you a point of reference, this is not inboard of the campus. It's out by the very nice women's soccer complex. Just to the north, you'll see the green box that's a 1, and to the left of that, the green box that's 2. That's 1. Each one of those represent 2 flag football and 1 soccer. The future, so we do a little bit of master planning long-term. They hope to add 2 more at some point in time. A couple of nice things that this really does. It cleans up some of the cotton field and dry field right there by soccer to prevent some of the blowing onto the campus or onto the playing surface. It enhances the entry with landscape and nice fence that kind of matches, maybe not matches, but complements the soccer entry. And there'll be a small 1,100 square foot facility right in front for storage, et cetera. So we're asking today really for 1 and 2 approval, 3 and 4 is for the future. The red dashed line is an agreement that Texas Tech many moons ago had with the city of Lubbock that just from a good city planning perspective, we needed a 10th Street thoroughfare through for an extra relief valve from Tech Parkway to Quaker. And that has to do with everything from fire egress, fire ingress to properties, as well as just safe traffic management. On the left edge up there where it hits Quaker, the red dash line, that does hit the alley point, which the local community said is a requirement, right between 8th and 9th Street.
We don't know
Can you go
around the
back to
property,
that?
the dirt.
Yeah.
I've got a question. We've got, 1 and 2 and 3 and 4 in the future. But what about just to the east of the soccer complex?
Those are 4 existing natural turf intramural fields as well.
They look pretty ragged.
They are in rough condition, just due to the drought and not a lot of rain. They do their best to keep those up. And Dr. Nellis, any comments on that? I mean, these are, yeah.
Down the bottom.
The fourth.
We have analyzed that before. I think this is really tied to a student referendum, and in working with the fiscal side of the game, you could pay for 2 fields. And from a long-term perspective, the fields on Flint Street related to a different initiative with campus beautification, not approved yet, but that really is going to become more of a park space versus the core intramural fields. Those take a lot of damage and take a lot of money to keep up because they're so high use. They really need more fields is the issue, not converting existing fields. So this expands the use. And I don't remember the metrics, but dark to dark, basically, the intramural fields on the weekend are being utilized, and every night until way past midnight, just to get all the flag football and soccer games in. So we need more capacity, not just new fields.
We own the property where it looks like there's a pivot, water pivot, or
Yes, sir.
up in the left-hand corner, the dirt, the red area, all of that.
Correct. And there's a center pivot on there. Where the X is today, and that is potential growth for Greek Circle 3, which has always been in the master plan. It's a little different shape right here. Then we're doing some planning on that right now with the city to make sure it fits. Yes, ma'am.
And those will be city roads, the red?
Yes, that is correct.
When would those go in?
Yeah, that's critical.
The city roads? Right now, there's no hard plan for that. I think what's going to happen is the city will require us, I think if Greek Circle 3,
There'll be a city road, but we'll have to pay. Yeah, absolutely. Usually they make the developers pay.
yeah, we did pay for the 10th Street expansion there as well.
Yeah, they
Now,
pay for stuff on our property.
Chancellor, to answer your question specifically, I think when Greek Circle 3, if it continues to grow, that's probably going to be the trigger point from the city to provide that safety outlet for traffic. How that's paid for, I don't know. You're probably right.
So, I kind of come back to should those 4 fields be synthetic turf if you've got that high usage?
They would love for those to be. I think long-term, they have.
You're looking down here on
They
the John.
cost.
down-
Yeah.
down
Yes,
the corner.
right.
Yeah.
Just a cost issue.
Again, just financially, we have the demand for those existing fields as well as the expansion.
Right.
And we just don't have the resources.
So I could think the question might be is a cost analysis
Sure.
on that. Would that be a fair assumption that the committee might like to have that? And just looking at,
We can
What they'll do.
certainly do that. I think we've actually looked at these fields before, and we couldn't take them down is the problem. But we can absolutely do a comparison. It's not a problem.
well, we'll have a little bit of a relief valve once the other 2 are up. And so the question might be is timing.
Sure.
Any other?
Wayne, I know that the student rec fees paying for these, correct? Did I remember that right?
Yes.
Is that right? And the Health Sciences Center student body voted not to participate, correct?
Our students study.
They want Beetle tickets, is what I.
That's ridiculous. I'd ask him how come it costs so much.
You know, I'll talk
money.
Am I right? That's correct, wasn't it? Okay.
That second bullet, Reece Anders, is really kind of addressing your question on how it's paid for.
Okay.
So it's 5.785 million, and we are asking to waive the directed fees for landscape enhancement and public art. Soccer has really set a precedent there where I think it's going to look nice and very nice there. We are going to have some landscaping, it just won't be the above over enhanced piece. We'll report to the board, obviously, and complete drawings and begin construction as soon as possible. Our goal is to have this completed by December of this year with approval.
Any other questions or comments? If not, entertain a motion.
So moved.
Thank you. If no other discussion, all in favor? Any opposed?
Debbie, no art?
It's okay. I mean, I try to. Big soccer ball. I know, I'm trying to.
Trees and stuff.
Yeah, well, we still have some plans for campus beautification, so I'm not putting it aside, okay?
Don't forget us.
I know, but you forgot.
We're working on it.
Remember, they
Working
study.
on
They
it.
don't ever, they don't go out,
You
they
don't have
study.
time
They go
for
out,
this.
they'll
Y'all
go
wanna
outdoors.
use them, remember?
Or study.
Yeah, we can give you guys synthetic trees.
Good point, okay. Let's move along. I think do we have our vote? Okay, let's move on. As I understand, we're going to pull item 10 from consideration at this time. So as you go through your books, we're now going to land on item number 11. But before Mr. Molina introduces this, I'd like to give the Chancellor an opportunity to talk about item 11, which is to approve a project to construct a new system office building.
Regent Monitor, Regents, this is something that was talked about long before I became Chancellor, about having a separate building in a separate place for the system away from the TTU campus. We looked at the bank building. Regent Monford and her committee did an in-depth look at that, and that was not something that was feasible. We looked at this, and Mr. Molina will talk about that in just a moment. But this is, in my opinion, the best thing that we could do for the system and for all the components. It would be at the southeast corner of Marshall Sharp Freeway and Texas Tech Parkway. It would be a building that we would be able to house all the people that work for the system. And I cannot tell you how important that is, in that day after day, I've got Scott Cooksey is not that far away, but it takes a while for him to get there. You know, we do have government relations, CFO, the general counsel. We have some of the people right there in the building with us. Would also, audit would be with us, and the commercialization technology, everyone would be in one building, and I think that would be great. We would also have an auditorium there for a place for meetings, and that the board would have a boardroom that would be their boardroom. The cost on this would be a max of $27.5 million. We've had people look at it. I think it would be below that, and that it would be financed through a revenue system that Mr. Brunges came up with, and that each component would pay 1/10 of 1% of what their budget is. And I think that anyone can find 1/10 of 1% if they need to trim something to help pay for this. The other method revenue is our HEAF funds. HEAF funds, we get TTU gets $23.4 million a year. HSC gets $17 million, and ASU gets $3.44 million a year. And those are funds that could be utilized to help pay on this. And your payment for HSC and TTU would be $700,000 a year. For ASU, it would be about $105,000. So you could split it up and pay half of it out of the designated tuition out of your budget. You can pay half of it out of HEAF funds. We also found that we have HEAF fund balances. HEAF fund balances are things that we have not spent money on. The comptroller keeps that money, so we earn no interest on it. And the balance, we had $9 million at Texas Tech, $19.6 million at HSC, and $4.5 million at ASU. Some of that is committed, some of it's not. But that gives you another source for funding. The other thing I want to bring out, I think that this is a golden naming opportunity for someone, and that we're going to work hard at trying to find someone to do that over the next couple of years. The method of financing is such that none of the components would make any payments until January of 2017. Is that right, Jim?
That's correct.
And so that gives them plenty of time to make adjustments on their budget to prepare for it. And I think this is a great location for it. You're right there on the expressway and the parkway, and you're looking at both campuses. It will free up some space. TTU will get a lot of space in the administration building. It also frees up some space as we grow this university in the bank building, or we may sell the bank building. And so those are things that we're looking at. This is something that I hope that we would do someday. And just in case you have any concerns about anything, the language has such that before construction contract is awarded, the board and the chancellor shall review the design and direction of the project to determine if adjustments are needed. So when the proposals come in, we're at 27.5, but if there's a bid at 24.8, it allows you to say, well, that's what we're going to do. So it would be final approval subject to adjustments, so it gives you complete control. And I respectfully request your approval.
Madam Chair, Chancellor, the Heath balances, I hadn't thought about that to be used on a project like this, but my understanding was that was generally for academic purposes, academic buildings, et cetera. Does this fit into that definition?
Jim?
Yes, it does. It could be used for buildings. It has to be used for E&G buildings. This would definitely qualify as E&G space.
Okay, all right. And that's a follow-up question. On those balances, do we have to use those or we lose them?
No, we don't.
So they roll over?
No, they roll over.
They can keep going.
And I think most institutions would prefer that we not use the balances directly, but use them as needed for debt.
Okay.
Yeah, we wouldn't be using the entire balance, just maybe some years you'd use on your payment, you might go 50-50, some years you might go a third. You know, it allows the components to make decisions on the best way to handle their budget.
Jeffrey?
Yeah, what was the intent of the Bank of America building upon purchase?
I'd have to go back and either Anders or our permanent regent, Francis.
He's too involved.
Our permanent regent, Rick Francis, who's been on the board for 72 years. When was the original, when the Bank of America building, what was purchased, what was the reason for it?
Well, originally it was purchased as a vision for housing the Board of Regents and the Chancellor's Center. There was this inside the curve and outside the curve thought process is the vision of having a system with multiple components, and under your leadership today we have a system.
Okay, so with that being the case, we talked about possibly selling the Bank of America building. Would it not behoove us to liquidate that asset and utilize it as
part of the pay down on this? Yes. Sure. That's one of the things we're going to be looking at.
There's also, John, even fundraising opportunities that Kent didn't touch on. But, the time, with the time that's going to develop from potential something approval before the project begins, still allows the institutional advancement to possibly raise contributions, donations for the funding of this.
We've really got 2.5 years to do some things before you'd have to start making payments. So there's a lot of adjustments that can be made during that period of time. And that Michael Molina said there's a possibility that you could build it and have it open by November of 15 or January of 16. So you're talking about maybe 1.5 years.
That's right, the January part. And the other part of that is, by building this, it frees up space that TTU
Right.
utilize also, and that should be one of the things at least we're thinking and planning.
Point.
Any other questions or comments? Michael, I know that
think
the
the Chancellor
Chancellor
covered
laid
all
out
the
most of
data
this. You
points.
may want to recite the verbiage for the
Okay,
record.
so basically, it's an effort to consolidate the system. It's about 200 employees roughly. The new facility will include office suites and support spaces, shared conference rooms, and coffee service areas. It's a key point because Regent Monfort, you clearly said, let's maximize the use of common space and shared space, not a lot of private meeting rooms. Let's be transparent about that. And then, of course, the Board of Regents space, but can also be used as public meeting space as well. We will need to extend some utilities to there. It will not be connected to our central heating and cooling plant. We'll run it like any other in a private industry building. Surface parking, we are not asking for a waiver, so we are including landscape enhancements and public art in this budget request. Budget's $27.5 million broken down as shown for you there. And the recommendation on the floor, is to authorize to proceed with a project to construct the new system office building with a budget of $27.5 million. Report to the THECB, complete the contract documents or construction drawings and specs, and award a construction contract. The caveat being, before we award a contract for construction, the board will actually have time to review that and make sure we're all in synthesis on the solution. The project will be funded through the revenue finance system, repaid by the components and various discussion y'all just had and different methodologies for that.
Move that we approve this project.
Any other discussion? If none, all in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? Motion carries.
Madam Chair, I want to take a minute and thank you and your committee for all your hard work on this. There's a lot of work that went on behind the scenes leading up to today's action. I want to, on behalf of the board, thank you, the entire committee, for the work that you guys did on this.
Thank you. Thank you all for your support on this.
You still have more?
Sir?
You still have more?
Yes, we still have one.
I can be as quick and brief I will be as brief as possible. Okay, next item.
Yes,
Regent Monfort?
item 12.
Okay, so item 12 is really just a report on all FP&C initiatives and institutional initiatives in the CIP or capital improvement. I will hit this pretty quickly. Regent Monfort, you did ask maybe in the last meeting, every session we kind of rotate institutions as a quick focus. These are not capital improvements that have come to the board for approval. This is Angelo State University. We just picked that because they had the coolest map, basically. So as Dr. May is quite proud of. Basically, on the left-hand side, there's 10 key initiatives that they are working on to improve the campus. And you can read those to the left. On the right are other things that we're working, or they're working, and we're working in one regard in terms of campus xeriscaping, managing the water issue, the Mayor Rousselot Ag Ed Center additional parking lot, and then some other small project management instruction and research center seismic vault installation. So this is just a snapshot of what's going on for your review and maybe drive some other discussion with Dr. May and his team as needed, what's happening on the campus. Dr. May, any comments?
Any updates on Johnson Street, Brian? None? Yes, sir.
One thing that this is my last meeting, everything, and this is still an issue. But I don't know if you have a pointer or not, but where Johnson Street goes through, that's been a bone of contention, and that the students walking through there, I'm just telling you, it's a dangerous spot, and that the city was going to close that, and it's been controversial. Brian May has worked hard on coming up with some compromises. We're still working on that. But I just want everyone to be aware, anytime they think about that campus, that is one issue that's not going to go away. I hope we can adjust it before someone gets hit, but it is a dangerous situation.
We should put speed bumps every 15 yards.
And that's been discussed.
That's
in the works now, I think.
That's be the.
And also to look at
That was the
narrowing
number
the
one thing
road
to do.
from a 4-lane to a 2-lane.
Yep.
At one time, it was the traffic was to go, what is that, Jackson?
Jackson Street.
Jackson
That's
Street,
correct.
and go around the campus, basically. But that has, the city has not followed through on that.
So to be clear, this is a decision that the city must make, And do we have on file with the city our request to do this and our concern about students? Because I think having something that maybe not necessarily mitigates our risk, but we need to have something on file with the city that says we recognize this as a risk for our students. And so if something does happen, then they have been informed. And I think that it behooves us to take that step to at least officially recognize that we see that there's a problem here.
And therefore, we need speak bumps.
Well, I think that, we can make some recommendations in whatever, and we can work together on what it is that we would like to see happen, and then being able to come together to really look at safety first. That's what it's all about. That's what's driving this discussion.
Would a letter from you as facilities chair to Dr. May not make sense, recognizing the political challenges that he faces?
You need to help us decide what helps you facilitate a better discussion with the city. Okay. Great, thank you very much.
Good idea. Thank you. I'll try to just kind of continue talking about all the initiatives and with Q&A as needed. Compliments to Texas Tech and the ops team and Nellis's team. Per new Regent rules, we're not breaking projects down to be smaller projects. They really did a good job in long-term planning for Stengel-Murdo Resident Hall renovations. These two projects, and I'm going to skip back and forth, Murdo Hall and Stengel Hall, totaling about $7 million worth of work, 6 different contracts that are small, window replacements, bathroom renovations, carpet tile in the south seating area, and then window and bathroom renovations, but really broken into separate projects. So they came to the table and really just wanted you guys to know that's what's going on this summer. It's a very aggressive schedule, but it's always like that in the res hall world. As soon as the kids are walking out, contractors are walking in. So compliments to them, and thanks for being transparent about this process. Yes, sir.
I would say one thing that Michael said, that he works closely with those people, and they really have to work hard under a lot of pressure to get a building, a dorm refurbished and have it ready by the time the kids show up in August. And they do an excellent job, and we've got staff people that probably sometime in October ought to be recognized because they do a great job. And I think you'll even see some of the problems we see coming up down the road when Dwayne gives his report as far as dorms are concerned.
Okay, the next item is just the master plan update. Once again, this isn't a run through the master plan. We're to a point where really just want to document to the Regents that mid-June, the week of the 15th, we're really trying to get a hold of your eyes and ears and mind. Working with Ben, trying to coordinate so we can pitch this out to you. The first part of June, we'll be talking to the presidents and the chancellor in preparation of that to get your feedback so that we can hopefully in August come to the board with a final draft for approval for a master plan update. And these are some of the visions and imagery that's going into the master plan in terms of wayfinding and creating that what the committee called special places and sacred ground, key points of entry, ports of entry that celebrate Texas Tech and its style, and really understanding what the designated campus zones are between academic, residential, and the connectivity and walkability, the 10-minute line, et cetera. So please note on your notes that we will try to get with you in mid-June. A lot of scheduling going on right now trying to make that happen. The new student housing complex, Regent Anders asked a question earlier. Yes, we'll have heads and beds in August. We are going to be completed in July. That says July, August. July 15th is our drop dead date for the hard construction. There'll still be some softscaping and some things going on outside the building and maybe some fine tuning. We want the contractor there the last couple of weeks while people are moving in, so there's no issues or things. I will say all of our quality checks on this facility have been top notch and passed with an A+ rating. We have had some serious winds and dirt blowing, which has stopped some of our roof installation. I'm not saying we're not going to finish, but it's certainly caused us some challenges on our ops team. There's about 250 men on the site a day, and they're not working 8-hour days. These are 16-hour days on the inside, the brick on the outside. We have brought in some more labor to make that happen, so we feel 100% confident about hitting this date. If you haven't driven by the parking lot, pull in there and look down into the north facade. It's absolutely beautiful, And it's probably one of the best connectivities to the old campus, if you will, or historic district from an architectural detailing standpoint. You'll really like that. Okay, quick run through. Biological Sciences Building Life Safety Upgrade. This is part of the Fire Marshal's initiative many years ago. That is complete, but for some landscaping and exterior work. So that building is 100% back on operation. The track team building, 140 days ago, this project was a pretty rough-looking facility. We expanded it, completely new renovation under the purview of Mr. Hokut, Mr. Parker, and Wes Kitley. You need to go see this before you leave town. It is absolutely beautiful. Looks fantastic. As you know, the Big 12 tournament's this week, or MAC track meet, excuse me, is this weekend. So it is ready to be used, and they have moved in, and kids' sneakers and clothes and all that good stuff are in their brand-new oak lockers that look very, very nice. College of Human Sciences Life Safety Upgrade, we're just kicking that off. We'll finish in August 2015. Once again, fire alarm, fire enunciation, and safety for all of our vertical high-rise. Campus beautification, this picture to the left, if you look where the connection, the walk there with the red tiles, that looks like that today. If you walk out there today, or looks like that a week ago, if you walk out there today, there's 10 new Chinese pistache, 25 new oak trees in the Memorial Circle. On the right side, there's 6 new oak trees in the Dairy Barn Pavilion, or the West Library campus is the formal name. We are moving quite well on this. The only thing that's changed from the very original time I talked to you, when we bid the work out, the planning plan was to have that done by the end of the summer. All the bids came in, and nobody would do that because nobody plants those. These are big trees, not little trees. Big trees with those kind of balls until they the root ball, it's not the right time to pull them out of the ground, so we're going to wait till they defoliate, install, and we'll be finished totally in February, but all the trees will be up by the end of the year. Plant Soil Science Building breaks ground here in about 30 days. We're working through some issues there. We had our prime contractor that we selected about a week ago, walked off the job. Let me rephrase that. Terminated the contract. Sorry, we have not started the job. And just due to human resources, one of the largest country, they're the contractor building the World Trade Center right now. They have pulled every resource to New York, basically, $3 billion initiative, and just said they could put 2 college graduates out here. I kindly said, no, thank you. Nothing wrong with college graduates, but they have never built anything. So we are going to number 2, Lindbeck out of Houston. We're negotiating that contract now. We feel like we can still begin in about 30 days and stay on track. So that's new news to the game, and we are pursuing that as aggressively as possible.
One of the things, could we back up on that?
Yes, sir.
This is, and all of you, most of you could not be here when we had the bear crop announcement and also the turning of ground. This is a huge impact on this university. I'm talking about this is, as far as research is concerned, this is one of the biggest things that's ever happened. This is a historic moment when one of the largest international companies in the world makes a commitment, and their commitment's been right at $27 million for research on our campus, and will be have full utilization of 22 of their PhDs doing research with our graduate students. And so if they're changing this, and have you gotten to the greenhouse yet? Or that's not on here?
It's not on here, no, sir.
You'll see across from where most of the people be housed, we're building a new greenhouse as well, and that's been approved before. But it's just amazing all that they're going to bring to this campus, and I appreciate the work that you've done and the support we've had over the last 6 years of getting this done. It's taken a long time. Scott Cooksey did a great job on it, but this is worth noting that this is a historic moment for Texas Tech. Thank you.
Yes, sir. Just a couple more. The Research and Technology Park broke ground this week. If you drive out to 4th Street, you'll see the fenced-in area, trailers on site. We're moving dirt, so it's the star on the right side picture. So that is moving. We'll be complete in about a year on that project. And Chancellor, let me apologize there. This is the actual demolition portion of the bear crop now named the Bear Crop Sciences Trait Development Facility. So this is under demolition. This has been completely gutted from what its current use was. Will be finished in January of 2015. The greenhouse is across the street. We have not broken ground on the greenhouse, but we are on track to complete.
When will that be finished?
January 2015.
Thank you.
Yes, sir. I mentioned before, Larry Combest Community Health and Wellness Center expansion. Tough project. We had some misses by our partner, but we're now complete with that, phase one. We do have another $300,000 or $400,000 HRSA grant request to expand the building on this end a little bit, which was not part of the original request. This was all federally funded and nothing out of the HSC budget in terms of capital improvements. So we are waiting on that response now. And the final one I have today is the El Paso School of Nursing, Gail Grieve Hunt School of Nursing, the $14.5 million initiative. I want to make real clear, it's not a green building, that's just the substrate, although many people have laughed. That kind of reminds them of El Paso artwork. It's very vibrant. So that is not the final. It will look like Texas Tech and just like the two buildings across the street. The date on September, that's really the substantial contractor completion date after September. So through October and part of November, we're installing furniture, fixture, equipment, QA, and punch listing. Gail Grieve Hunt team, the School of Nursing team is planned move-in date in December. So we're all square there. I just wanted to make sure that September was clear. That project is moving quite quickly and looks good. Regent Monfort, that's all I have today.
Okay, thank you very much, Michael. I appreciate the report. One note, I think that I've talked to Regent Steinmetz a little bit, and with you, Mr. Brunges, and we start looking at, we've got a very robust building projects going on because we're growing, and we always want to make sure with you that we're within our percentages of debt service that we need to be in, and we like to have that validated both through facilities and through finance. And we certainly look to you to guide us in making sure that when we approve these projects that we're doing so with that in mind. And so we appreciate your input there too.
Yes, I look at that very carefully too, and I always calculate it based upon current enrollment numbers. And one thing that's helped our debt capacity over the last 5 years or so has been our continued growth in the financial well-being of the Texas Tech University system. That financial wealth then in turn converts that we have more bonding capacity, and we're able to do projects like this. You know, the last time I estimated it, we had about $220 million in capacity left over, and that did not include even taking out the tuition revenue bonds, about $160 million, which should probably be taken out from that, because that's not, I know it's an obligation of Texas Tech, but really funded through the state.
That's right. That's right. Well, thank you very much. We appreciate your help on and guidance on that. Mr. Chairman, this concludes the report of the Facilities Committee.
Thank you, Madam Chairman. The meeting of the Board of Regents of the Texas Tech University System is now called to order. The board will now convene an executive session as authorized by sections 551071, 551072, 551073, and 551074 of the Texas Government Code. An executive session.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. There are 3 action items out of executive session today, and if it pleases the board, I'll read the motions one at a time and have them acted on separately. Mr. Chairman, I move that the board appoint Dr. Richard Lang as the President and Chief Executive Officer of the Texas Tech University Health Sciences Center at El Paso and as Dean of the Paul L. Foster School of Medicine effective July 1st, 2014. And having determined that an employment agreement is in the best interest of the university, the board authorizes the Chancellor to execute an employment agreement with Dr. Lang under the terms and conditions set forth in executive session.
Is there a second?
Second.
All those in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? The motion passes. Please continue.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Second motion. Mr. Chairman, I move that the board approve acceptance of a gift from United Supermarkets and the renaming of the arena as the United Supermarkets Arena under the terms and conditions set forth in executive session.
Is there a second?
Second?
All those in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? The motion passes. Please continue.
And finally, Mr. Chairman, the third motion of the day. Mr. Chairman, I move the board authorize President Mitchell to conclude the negotiations for a gift of funds and real property in the city of Abilene for the support of the Texas Tech University Health Sciences Center operations and for the support of plans for a school of public health to be initiated in the city of Abilene under the terms and conditions set forth in executive session.
Is there a second? Nancy? Okay. All those in favor?
And I will,
Aye.
I will recuse myself from the vote.
Absolutely. All those in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? The motion passes.
Mr. Chairman, this concludes the action items out of the executive session for the day.
Thank you, Regent Andrews. The meeting of the Board of Regents will now recess. The meeting of the board will reconvene on Friday, May 16th, 2014, at 8:30.
Tomorrow it is.